Welcome to the Typical Skeptic Podcast, where we dive deep, you decide. Questioning the matrix, from UFOs, where the shadows unknown reside. Rob Khalil busting myths like ghosts in the night. Paranormal probes, secret space ops, yo, we keep it real, no fright. Typical skeptical seeking, never sleeping on the lies. Aliens, Anunnaki, black ops in disguise. From abductions to ancient scripts, we flip the script. Why GSP style, mile after mile, truth can't hide. Hold up, TSP crew assemble, we dismantle the fable. My lab's targeted souls, breaking out of the stable. Dogman howling, Bigfoot prowling, cryptids in the mist. Mandela the fifth twist in reality, can't resist the twist. Soul trap snapping, reincarnation mapping, holographic dreams. Near-death visions, out-of-body missions, waking up the teams. No censorship here, we fear no elite scheme. Conspiracy kings ringing bells, hear the freedom ring. Skeptical seeking, never sleeping on the lies. Extraterrestrials interdimensional.
Welcome to Typical Skeptic Podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Typical Skeptic Podcast. I was running a little bit late tonight, so I just decided to start the show. Nate's here. I'm going to bring him on the stage in a second. My good friend Nathan Sizek. I consider him one of my best friends in the podcast space, honestly. Him and Matthew Mornian, So I wrote tonight on the Typical Skeptic Podcast, I'm joined by returning guest, and I would say fan favorite researcher Nathan Sizek. Nathan has become known for his outspoken views regarding disclosure, alleged remote influence technology, social engineering, psychological operations, and MyLab abductions, and what he believes are the hidden mechanisms shaping public perception. Unlike many voices in mainstream ufology, Nathan challenges popular narratives and encourages independent thinking when evaluating claims surrounding UFOs, experiencers, disclosure movements, and government involvement. What else did I write? Oh, yeah, and then I went into the topics, and, tonight we can talk about remote mind control, social engineering, psychological manipulation, disclosure narratives, MyLab experiences, information warfare, perception management, independent research, UFO disclosure, consciousness, and join us for a thought-provoking conversation that asks difficult questions and explores alternative perspectives on disclosure and modern society. And with all that said, I'd like to bring my good friend to the stage. Nate, thanks so much for coming back on, man. How are you?
I'm tired, Rob. How are you?
It's the same, like a little bit burnout, but I mean, I look forward to these, I really do.
Well, tonight's energy is being brought by Kirkland Signature energy drink. I just bought
It's crazy that you mentioned energy, dude, because something's really off with the energy today. I said on Facebook and someone's post, I said, it feels like we're in a full moon type energy, or what you would call, I don't know if you believe in this, or a retrograde, because it seems like a lot of people are just anxious. A lot of people are kind of feeling everything seems surreal and off today, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? It seems like they're fucking with us big time. I don't know who that is, but some mechanism is messing with people. People were acting crazy in the grocery store. It was just weird, I don't know.
Well, it's more than just, today. It's every day. I mean, I have to drive to work every day and back, and you see some things that like this morning I saw a pretty almost nasty accident with a school bus that was in front of me, and this guy shot out of a side road from an industrial park and thought that he could beat the school bus by a millisecond, almost hit him right head on the side.
Holy shit, man.
That was a fun one. But yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for having me, and I'm a little tired tonight, a little under the weather. I've just been fatigued for a while because I was sick for so long. I just haven't been able to to bounce back, and this is the third podcast that I've done in 5 days. So one of those I had sleep for, and the other one I didn't. But this one I have even less. But I'm going to do the best I can tonight. So that's why I'm doing a shameless plug here for Kirkland. I get nothing from it other than a couple hours of wakefulness.
Yeah.
needed the caffeine. It's better than coffee. I found that I can't drink that anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I was thinking about talking about some of the things that I've been through targeting wise, but I'm still working on going to be starting my social media project soon here. As soon as I get laid off on the 18th, I'll be working on it right after that. After I get like one full day of sleep on the 19th, then I can start kind of getting to it. I've been putting it off because it just I'm just burnt out, man. Really am. So got something going on with me. I'm not sure what it is, but I'll figure it out eventually. Maybe I need a parasite cleanse. I hear a lot of people get a lot of health benefits in that, and I've never done one. So I got to do some fasting. Just I got to get myself together. But anyway, I just wanted to start the show and talk about something that happened about a little over a month ago. And I don't know if I brought it up here before. I probably didn't, but just in case I have or haven't. When you do stuff like this and you go public, there's consequences. And, I've had to weather a lot of those consequences over the last couple of years since going public, but I was already going through them. They just heated up when I made the decision to go public. And by going public, I substantially helped my situation out because I found answers and I solved a lot of problems for myself. So I got to the point where they weren't in my head anymore, and I wasn't dealing with V2K to the point like I was. And their grip basically was pried off of me by celestial or you'd say extra dimensional intervention, as well as just hardcore persistence. But they still have the ability to reach out and hurt you. So a little over a month ago, for about a 3-week period, and I'm not saying this because I'm looking for sympathy. People are, there's always going to be somebody skeptical out there and just say, oh, he's trying to make himself look better. Or he's looking for sympathy. I fully accept what happens to me. So I don't have the fear of it. This is just the shit to go through. But for 3 weeks, and actually even before it started, I was sitting around thinking to myself, they made plenty of death threats to me. And the one couple of times that I have interacted with an alter that I have that's in the programs or was, I don't know if he's retired or he's still actually active. But anyway, he said that they were going to try to kill me by age 55. So, but he said only if you left. So he let me know that I had the ability to pretty much stop that if I wanted to. And I certainly do because I've got a lot more to do. And I'm not going to let them dictate to me when it ends because, they put me in this body and I'm the one that's going to take myself out of it, not suicide. I'm going to take it out of, the normal way when my oversoul pulls me out of this experience. It's not going to be them that does it. Their control over me is over with. I can't speak for whatever's fractured off of me as far as alters are concerned, but I'll pull them with me when the time comes. But anyway, for about 3 weeks, and it started out where I was thinking about the subject, are they going to get me? What's going to happen? What's my future? And I thought about them, taking me out and the threats they made. And I heard this voice, and I have a kind of a selective filter when it comes to the voice to skull. So if it's important and it's something I need to know, I'll hear it. The rest of it, I block it out. And anyway, the voice said, "You haven't seen nothing yet," meaning that they had a lot more in store for me and that they were confident they were going to get me. And this was one of these AI program chatbot voices that a lot of TIs talk about. It wasn't a live person waiting for me to think of something. It was something attempting to monitor me on a constant, 24/7 and, to monitor my thoughts and then simply slip in the dark, like that. So right after that, it was the second month of starting a new job. Each day that I went to work, I was having a near collision for about 3 weeks. It was about 9 of them, plus a very bizarre road rage incident. So what I learned is you can sever the ties with the V2K and you can shut out their ability to tap into you. You can limit their ability to manipulate your thoughts and your behaviors. But at the same time, they still have the technology to use AI to remote view and scan not just you, but an area of you, and then target people on the road, for example, causing them to zone out. So somebody could be going to work at the same time as me, not wanting to get involved in an accident or have any problems at all. They just want to get to where they're going safely. And then all of a sudden, they have a momentary lapse of judgment, a momentary lapse of control over the vehicle where they just space out. And I believe this is what was happening, because it's not normal to go to work and then for a 3-week period have 9 near collisions and then 1 road rage incident. It was like the cherry on top.
That's insane, dude. That's a lot. That's a lot,
And then it abruptly stops. Excuse me. So rather than recounting all these, because I can't remember all of them, I just know it was roughly about 9 plus the road rage incident. I just want people to know that this is the kind of shit that you deal with. And it isn't a game. They are very, very serious. And, I'd have to, when I think about it, it's like, why are they so afraid? What is the impact that I would have, even if I wasn't shadow banned, like my finger caught in it. So the answer to that is that my impact will probably be minimal no matter what happens, no matter how much I talk or how long I do it. But it's more of kind of like death by 1,000 cuts scenario, meaning that if one person can get away with it and withstand their attacks and do it, it opens the door for other people to gain confidence to do the same. And everybody that talks and goes against the grain like this is going to make a difference. They're going to influence other people, and then they're going to come forward. So it's a cascading kind of effect, or like a snowball rolling down a hill. It gets bigger as it goes. So that's about, the most accurate analysis that I can give about the situation. But early on, not long after I started going on your show, and I think you probably remember some of these, but I don't know how you got so many podcasts, but I'm sure you remember we did some shows. I couldn't even tell you even 10% of what I said on all of them. But there was a point where I talked about when the facade came down with what I would call the V2K handler network. Okay, and that's when they were no longer portraying themselves as extraterrestrials. And prior to that, they were kind of like mystery beings in my life. They were intervening, talking to me, doing things, turning on psychic abilities, and then turning them off to the point where it just, it led me along into a false awakening. And I was involved in a cult, an online cult, which, is actually pretty common for people like myself. They have different, what I would call virtual temple complex websites or social media groups, people to follow that, either put out a kind of a false religion in the case that I was in, or they put out false information, a false belief system, and they corral people into groups, and then you go down this little you have this experience. You have an experience in being essentially misled, where you believe falsehoods, and it takes you away from what you should be believing in. It says, hi to you both. I want to give you my sincerest gratitude for, I can't see the rest of it. Can you
your
read it?
courage to these dark times, she says.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
So anyway, one of the things that happened, and it was the kind of the freakier part of it is when they finally started talking to me. They were very threatening, and I had a little bit of, I wouldn't say it was exactly fear, but it was worry, because I didn't know how far they could go. I knew that they had substantial control over me. Like, for example, I had a gas pain, a very, very mild one, and the V2K handler was able to point it out right as I felt it and tell me that you're being completely neural monitored, where we know everything that's taking place with your physiology, and he could determine whether or not I had a gas pain or not. So when it gets to that point, and that's all done for shock and all purposes. They want to intimidate you, and they tried that tactic a few times. And but I asked them, I said, why did you do this to me? And they said, to preserve the continuity of government. And I think that really says it all, doesn't it, Rob? I mean, because they have taken people that they feel have certain talents, and they've put them in these programs, and they abduct them as children. Well, when you do that and you wake these people up and you activate them, because we're kind of put to sleep when we come here. When we're born into this world, we're basically put into a container body, and for the most part, the way it works is that if you have certain talents, they'll put you in a psychic bloodline, which is monitored by the military and the extraterrestrials. And then they will monitor you, and then if they feel that they can use you in one of these programs, then they will start the abductions at an early age. Sometimes it can be as early as 4 years of age. I've heard, for me, it could have been about 6, because I remember being abducted at 6. But I believe, what I remember, is that I've had visitors at night prior to that. So it could have happened sooner than that, or I could have just had visitations at first, followed by abduction. So I'm one of those people that they feel that if I wake up and reach any potential at all, then I'm a threat to national security. And of course, if you've been following anything that's been going on with Israel and the world and everything else, you'll realize that, other than paranoia over maintaining control, which is their threat to national security, it's really the context of it. They really couldn't give a damn about national security, because they're basically trying to merge our entire military with Israel.
Dude, I was gonna say, people aren't having it. Like, like that country you just named in the Middle East. Some girl is on Instagram. Like, people are starting to become ballsy with it. Like, I think some girl was on Instagram today. I guess Instagram is a little bit more, but I'm just, I don't know what's going on with the censorship, but I mean, she was outrightly burning a Israel flag. And like, she was playing Creedence Clearwater Revival. I was like, damn, that's America for you. I mean, like, because you know what, like, here's what it is. Like, a lot of people feel like they're being controlled by a foreign government. You know what I mean? And they want to feel like, they don't even want to feel like they're being controlled by their own government, let alone a foreign one. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't know.
Well, real quick, my phone's ready to die, and this is off topic, but it is worth bringing up. Let me see if I can find this real quick. Looks like I probably can't. I'll tell you but here it is, right here. You see, I got like 4%.
The reason we're in trouble is because over 74% of federal spending is on autopilot, mandatory spending. That's your entitlement programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and then things like Social Security. They have to be adjusted and fixed. We have a plan to do that next year, and it's critical. We're going to lead up to what we have to do and address. The largest spending items, the reason we're in trouble is because over 74% of federal spending is on autopilot, mandatory spending. That's your entitlement programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and then things like Social Security. They have to be adjusted and fixed. We have a plan to do that next year, and it's critical. We're going to lead up to what we have to do and address. The largest spending item, the reason we're in trouble is because over 74% of federal spending is on autopilot, mandatory spending.
I think it just repeated itself. What he's saying there, that's Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House. I don't know who he was addressing. It may have been Donald Trump, but this was something that was called on a microphone, a hot mic, I believe. And it's been circulating around a bit in the news, and people have been upset about it online. What he's talking about is making significant cuts to the social safety net, Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. And they refer to these programs as entitlements. Well, I don't consider it an entitlement when you pay into it. So we're all paying into it in the form of income taxes. We're paying in the Social Security, and we're paying for these programs. We want them to actually be there when we need them, especially when we retire. And especially when we fall on hard times and we need help, and especially when we need health care and we can't afford it. We can't go into these high dollar exchanges where we're not employed, or our employer doesn't offer a good enough health care plan that covers us or we can afford. Because a lot of times small employers can't afford to pay much of the coverage, the cost of the premium, so they pass it on to the employees. So they're talking about making massive cuts to what we've paid into, which they call entitlements, which is like, in their mind, they're entitled to our money, but we're not entitled to getting anything with it other than going to prison, because that's still free. Most cases.
Yeah, like, because if you don't pay your taxes, they'll literally try to put you in prison. But if you talk to the sovereign citizens will tell you that when you pay your taxes, you're making a donation to the government. That's what you know. So it's like, what kind of world are we living in? You know what I mean? Like the whole tax thing is a fucking scam and a half, dude. Because like when, and also going back to the thing, when a large part of your money goes to supplying a foreign nation with aid, my tax dollars are going to fund Middle East wars. I'm not for that. You know what I mean?
Well, it's even worse because they're talking about now merging our military with Israel's military. So it wouldn't even be like aid to Israel. It would be a partnership where Israel dictates what military crusades that we go on, just like now, except it's going to be our tax dollars are going to be funding it wholeheartedly, just like it's our own military.
That's fucking bonkers. That's fucking insane. Exactly. Excuse my language, but that's fucking insane. I hope there are some brains left in this country and that they don't do that, because like Bibi is a fucking complete psychopath, dude. He he heard that Trump was, I think he heard that Trump was going to try to make not peace, but they were going to try to seal up things with Iran. And then he went and bombed Lebanon again, dude. He did it again. And it seemed like he did it out of spite, just to keep the war going, and then someone said it's because if they make peace in Iran, they think Bibi will go to jail, I mean, it's so crazy what's going on, dude. It's fucking absurd. You know what I mean? It's literally like we have children running the government and like our lives and like these war and playing war games, and it's like, what is this?
It's basically it's the satanic takeover of the United States government as well as other governments. You have a world satanic cabal that's behind all of this. And they work for the extraterrestrial presence, despite what they want to admit.
Yeah,
they're pulling the puppet strings. So what you're seeing is essentially what they want what they want us to experience. And Mike Johnson was talking about making these big cuts to the entitlements, which could be as high as $500 coming off of your monthly Social Security check, and God knows what they're going to do to Medicaid. They've already trying to cut everybody off of it now. And Medicare, of course, doesn't, I don't know how good they cover prescriptions. That's been another issue. But yeah, they're going to take that money that they need to pay for these wars out of your Social Security, out of your Medicaid, out of your food assistance, and out of your Medicare. These are things that we all pay into. This is what we need to survive. We're the only country in the world, to my knowledge, that doesn't have an actual real healthcare system. We have a for-profit kind of free-for-all kind of crazy system to where the insurance companies dictate the prices and the pharmaceutical companies dictate the cost of the medications. And we're left basically having to pay for this or we die. And it's disgusting. And of course, if you fall on hard times like I did over the past year, you can't get any help, because they'll tell you have to work 20 hours a week. Well, if I could find work, I mean, this is not the current situation, but the past one, if I could find a job, I wouldn't need to ask the government for money. But they want me to have a job in order to get the bare minimum. So to get $75 a month in food assistance, I had to work 80 hours a month. Well, that's difficult to do when no one will hire you. And we got the AI takeover coming. But you also, at first, you're going to have the AI-induced austerity, which is meaning AI takes over jobs. So you've got that. You got the downturn of the economy, extremely high inflation and gas prices, all of these factors. And they're talking about taking out our social safety net and gutting it even more to pay for this, to pay for more crusades for Israel, to expand its borders, to cover all of the Middle East, like Mike Huckabee was talking about.
It's the Greater Israel Project, right? Like, have you heard of this? The Greater Israel Project, where it seems like they want to take part of Lebanon, they want to take part of Turkey. It's like supposedly Turkey will be next, I think.
Yeah, I brought it up on your show because it was, I came on and I talked about, these stories of Stargates and giant bones and things like that, and how the V2K handlers were essentially flooding the community with this information. And essentially dehumanizing us to the point where, we're supposed to acquiesce to the agenda and completely ignore these wars and what's going on. And we're supposed to be waiting for Stargates and med beds out of all of this process when none of it's true. And the whole thing is ridiculous. So I just wanted to bring that up to let people know that this is what they're going to be trying to do, and their goal is after. Now, here's the other problem: there's an election coming, so they're banking on winning the election. This is the Republican Party. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I can't stand to be involved with any of it. I've never registered for either party, and at this point, I don't even think it's worth voting anymore because no matter
I feel the
who.
same way. I have conservative values, but I'm an absolute independent. I always was an independent, but I got coerced into voting for Trump because I thought he was going to do good and I thought he was outside the system, but like I'll never vote again. I swear on my dad's grave, I'll never vote again. There's no chance you will ever get me in a voting booth ever again. Unless there's a day where they say we're going to rip the entire system down and we're going to rebuild it and we're going to put people that like the people want. I don't know.
Right.
That's kind of where I'm at.
I said this in a recent podcast a couple of days ago. I think it was Friday night. I said, what they need is to have a test for emotional intelligence in our politicians before they take elected office or they get appointed. They need to take an emotional intelligence test, as long with a sanity test and whatever other psychological profile tests we can give them. But they need to have emotional intelligence. And that's what's extremely lacking because most of these people are psychopaths. And the real dirty doers are the sociopaths, the ones that just do all the dirty work. These are the people in the agencies. But somebody who's going to run the country or run a state or a county needs to have a psychological evaluation, and they need to have a test for emotional intelligence. They have to have a certain minimum score in order to be able to do this, because you can't have somebody that's emotionally dead, who's corrupt, who's there just to deceive people, running things, especially the presidency. So this is what we have. We have it's garbage in, garbage out. People have just went to sleep at the wheel, and they've refused to police their government, and they just want to live their lives, and they just want to go to work and come home and watch TV and eat and go to bed and repeat it and live on the weekend if they're lucky to have a Monday through Friday job. And this is where it's gotten us. It's gotten us to this point. And, I've been the person who's been blowing the alarm, sounding the alarm, the canary in the coal mine since I was about 14. And everybody's told me the same thing. Shut up. We're tired of hearing it. You're being negative. Just go along with things and live your life and stop reminding us of all the things that are going bad that we can't change because we've got to work every single day. If we quit our jobs, which we can't, maybe we could do something, but you really can't do anything. And that's the biggest lie of them all. We're consenting to this crap. Everybody is, I can't say I am because I'm speaking up about it, but there's only so much that I can do. I can talk and get targeted. I can be pushed down and looked down upon because nobody likes somebody who's negative and talks about these things, even though talking about it and doing it and being an activist is positive. Most people see it as negative. So they bite the hand that feeds, they bite the hand that saves. That's just the way they're programmed. Anyway, we'll take another drink of stuff.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. This is so funny from Jason. Jason brought a little bit of levity to the conversation. So Jason said, "What if we let 50 Cent run everything?" I don't know what made him say that. He said, "What if we put 50 Cent?"
Any word? Okay, well, George Carlin had a good plan. He said we need to appoint a king, and when the king doesn't do the right thing, we kill the king and replace it with another king. So to go a little further with that, I figured, since rich people want to be kings, then we'll start with them until we get rid of them all, because none of them will probably measure up to what we need. So we can work our way down. Trump will be the first and gone, and then we just go from there.
I was really hoping that Trump was different. So there's still a small part of me that has faith, that maybe he can turn things around. But obviously, I can't front. I'm gonna watch the UFC event at the White House this weekend. But I heard certain people are gonna be there. But I've been a UFC fan my whole life since since the 90s. I went and watched when Hoist Gracie was fighting, and then I started watching again in 2013. Because life happens and stuff. So I've always been, because I've always been involved in martial arts, except for now. I got out of shape, but most of my life I've been. So for me, it's a big deal to have the UFC at the White House. But what's coming along with it, the fact that they're putting Erica. I don't know if you heard about this, but supposedly I think Erica Kirk's going to be hired to like not run it, but like she's gonna be hosting it or something like that. Which is like
Oh,
I don't know what she has to do with UFC. You know, it's like I don't have anything against Erica. Like I like Charlie Kirk. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't very, like I said, I'm not very political, but like I like what Charlie Kirk stood for, and like I don't have a problem with Erica, but I don't think she should be hosting a UFC event. You know, I don't know.
well, no, I really don't think they should be having one there in the first place. It reminds me of ancient Rome and, the bread and circus right before the empire collapsed. They had a Colosseum, and there were people killing one another for entertainment.
Yeah.
So Trump is like Caesar. So this is all, and he probably sees himself like that. He probably has a golden crown that he puts on, and he probably stands in front of the mirror and he looks at himself. But yeah, a couple things with that, and then I'll move on to the other stuff. Is I heard this, so this isn't heard a couple of things actually might be interesting to discuss. As far as Charlie Kirk's death, right? I heard that the SUV, instead of putting him in an ambulance and taking him away like he normally would, they put him in an SUV, and they claim that the paramedics weren't there. Well, apparently they were, and they refused and put him in the SUV. Very next day, they had the SUV completely cleaned, and then they immediately sold it. The platform that the event took place on, where Charlie Kirk was killed, they immediately ordered that to be destroyed, torn up, and repaved. This was done within a week, I believe. So they clearly have been sanitizing the entire thing. And also, too, the rifle that the shooter, and I don't remember, okay, I don't think this is the Charlie Kirk shooter. This is the one that I believe, and I think the one that shot at Trump. It was the one that took the rifle apart with a screwdriver and then put it back together without.
I saw, dude. I was like, "How's that even possible?" Like, and I heard he changed his clothes too. Like, no, someone was saying that the other day on a podcast. Right, some other guy managed to change his clothes, like put a rifle together, and like Secret Service or nobody sees him. You know what I mean? He's just chilling up there on the roof, like waiting to it's like what the fuck?
Where the rifle turned? Guess where the rifle turned up at? At a house owned by Palantir.
Dude, me and you must have been watching the same podcast. I heard that same thing. Which one was that from?
It's probably Jimmy Dore's podcast.
Yeah, I watched Jimmy Dore. Yeah, I do watch Jimmy Dore. Yeah.
It was Tucker Carlson interviewing Jimmy Dore. That's what it was.
Yeah. That was he's good. Yeah, I like his producer Kurt Metzger. He's a pretty cool. He's a cool dude. He has his own podcast. He gets massive amounts of views, but former I think Mormon or Latter-day Saint or something like that. Rock Castaldo was on his show. That's why I started following him, and then I found out he worked for Jimmy Dore. You know what I mean? So I just started following Jimmy Dore because he always has interesting stuff. Jimmy Dore's been covering the data centers. He's been covering the Israel stuff. He's been covering
everything but the alien stuff, pretty much.
They don't touch the UFOs.
They got their hands full, and he's doing better than Alex Jones. I mean, there was a time when Jimmy Dore was on the Young Turks, and he was drinking the Kool-Aid like was it Cenk Uygur?
Do you know like Anna Kasparian though? I think she's hot. I mean, I think sometimes she's got good views, or maybe I don't know. What do you?
Her views have been evolving to the point where she's realizing both sides of this are just a sham, and this whole system is totally corrupt. So when I see people like that come around, I'm happy to see it. But we all need to move to a neutral, nonpartisan, non-political party type of central, area where we've realized the situation is beyond help, and we have a totally corrupt government, and we just have to be honest with ourselves that there's nothing that they won't do.
But see, the thing is what's the problem is like they've done a really good job at dividing us, because like if you look at like some of the stuff the people on the far left stand for, which is like the whole trans thing, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong. I'm just saying there's like the issues. You know what I mean? Like we can name them off. Some people think that some of that stuff's pretty bad. You know what I mean? Especially people that tend to be far right. And then you have the far right where people are a little bit more about freedom and, like guns and, like just, like, I don't know. It seems like they're too far apart. What do you think? Do you think we could like find a happy medium?
Yeah, I think we do. And I think we are finding one slowly. It needs to happen quicker, but there's still people that are just glued to that television and glued to the propaganda, and they can't think for themselves. And I have, that's most of my family, for example. They don't want to know what's going on. Most of the people that support this garbage don't know what's going on and don't want to know. So when you start talking to them, you find out that they don't know anything. So you try to educate them, and then you realize they don't want to know, and they'll tell you that. They're like, I don't want to know.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't want to know, then why do you want to support one side of this or the other and be ignorant as you're doing it?
You know what it is? A lot of times,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I think. I don't know. This is not all of it, but like I can tell you, like in my mom's case, like my mom's like an old school Democrat. You know what I mean? So she grew up in the days with Kennedy and stuff like that. So she, it's like ingrained in her views. So so like she's just used to that. You know what I mean? Like whereas like I don't know. Like I've been somewhat of a conservative since 2009, 2008, 2009. Like I was listening to Michael Savage back then, but like like I'm not where I would never consider myself like a Republican. I would consider myself an independent more than anything. Because I don't like I totally agree with you. I don't like the partisan stuff. I don't like the politics. Like I feel like both parties use things against us to, for example, going back to the whole UFC thing. Like I saw a couple guys put a video out saying that the Democrats were trying to get the UFC event shut down, and it's like, okay, like we know, like the Democrats aren't going to speak for themselves, and I don't know if they are or they aren't. You know what I mean? They possibly could be, but like, you know what I mean? That's getting them to favor one side of the political party. You know what I mean? It seems like it's like they use like psychological agendas and stuff like that. Because I guarantee you, the UFC event goes on no matter what.
Sure will. The point is to keep their supporters in a low information state, and then motivate them by hysterical, emotional type of propaganda. Okay. And then pit both sides together. So we've been manipulated for quite a while. I mean, during Biden, there was a lot of mischaracterization of transgendered people to the point where, the stereotype that was being pushed is like somebody that dresses like a clown or, like a demonic unicorn with just outrageous behavior and everything else. And they stereotyped that whole group of people to the point where they weaponized any attempt at them trying to get some kind of equality along with the gay, community. It was everything's been weaponized, everything. They go from one thing to another. They go from from homophobia and transphobia in the media to then they shift. Then it goes to right now it's about class warfare. Okay, so those of us who work are supposed to support cutting the entitlements off to ourselves as well as the poor, or the working poor, whatever, just all of the people in the middle class and the working and the non-working poor. So we're the bad guys because we have these entitlements, and the money needs to go to Israel. Money needs to, because Trump said so. He says we're a war. He says we're a war nation or a war country or warlike country, and we need to leave all of these entitlements up to the state. So let them pay for Social Security and health care, and we'll just take your federal tax dollars and we'll blow the hell out of the world and shape it into the image that we want to. And that's what we're here to do.
What do you think Israel has on him? Like, do you think they have something on him?
I think he's been involved in pedophilia, child rape, possibly present during murders. I think it's just like he's just as guilty as the rest of them. And I think we know he had a lot of involvement with Epstein going back 15 years. So anybody that has had that much involvement with Epstein is deep into the situation. And there's no excuse. And I think that's what it is. And you have that, but you also have, and this is something that people need to know, is that Trump was always in the back pocket of the Zionist lobby. They bailed him out and made sure that when he went bankrupt, that he got bailed out. They've been helping him the entire time, and they've been behind his presidency both terms. So you got to follow the purse strings. And once you do that and you realize, hey, the illusion is that he was one of us or he was one of them, and he shifted and he wanted to save the United States. And so that, that's the illusion. I want to hold that thought for a second. I want to get into voice to skull and mind control. So I want to talk about the whole Trump, which we call the Trump prophecy. Then we can kind of move into, my situation and as far as the mind control, because I like to talk about the various types of mind control tonight and help people understand this, because it's something that I've realized that very few people in the community are really well versed in and educated in. There's people in this community that I thought would know about these handler networks, but they don't. And so this is something I need to keep talking about, obviously. So, but anyway, I wanted to get on one thing, which is weather modification. This was covered by Jimmy Dore, by the way, and I have to give him a lot of credit because he went from just being a comedian who got political. He was leading left, and then he's now realizing that the left and right are just an illusion, and this whole thing is a scam, and we're going into a global world government controlled by AI, and it has to be stopped or slowed down. Whatever we have to do, we have to prevent it from being fully formed around us, because that literally is our death. So I have to give a lot of credit for him for covering literally everything and being a kind of house of fire every time I see him being interviewed. I'm really impressed. And he's probably the only person that I could say that about right now, because he's really not holding back.
He's getting in the algorithm too, because he's getting recommended to me. You know what I mean? So I guess that's a good thing. You know, like it's I don't know.
Well, we also have to be careful of psyops, but
yeah,
I don't get that with him. I think that there's only so much control they're able to exert, and at some point, the dam's going to break, and I think maybe that's the case with him, as far as supporting people watching him. So they can't just erase him in the algorithms like they can with somebody like us. So he was talking about weather modification, and I've been listening to I don't remember the guy's name, but he's been talking about chemtrails or stratospheric aerosol injection for years. He's one of the leading experts on it. He's been on multiple podcasts and programs and documentaries about it. He was talking about the Iranian government accusing NATO and the United States and their allies in the Middle East of doing weather modification and preventing it from raining in Iran. And this goes back at least 15 years. So they've been using weather warfare. And there's still, believe it or not, there's still people that refuse to believe that chemtrails are real and won't do the research.
Yeah.
Look up stratospheric aerosol injection. Don't look up chemtrails, because if you do, there's a lot of debunking sites, and you'll have Snopes and everything telling you that it doesn't exist when all of the evidence is there. You just have to look up a different term: stratospheric aerosol injection.
But don't lose your train of thought. I wanted to tell you about this. So, like, I might still have it on film. Okay, so I got a plane on film about a month ago. I've talked about this. It looked weird to me. It looked like it was more lit up than the usual plane. Like, I thought it was like a UFO or drone or something. No, thinking more like a UFO at first, but then I realized it was a plane. Like, I showed people, and people thought it was definitely a plane. But here's what's interesting about it: it looked more lit up, way more lit up than the average plane. Like, it was illuminating like 10 to 15 feet in front of it, at least from my estimation. Then I went inside, and this was a dry, hot summer night, right? And this, I'm going to come full circle with what you're saying, because what happened was 15 minutes later, it started pouring down raining, which is like, I was like, was that like a chemtrails plane? You know what I mean? And they do it at night now, maybe, or something. I can't prove it. I have no,
Well, at least you're looking up and you're paying attention to things. So what happened was the Iranian military, I believe, was in the United Arab Emirates, where there was a military base that they found that was doing the weather modification to keep it from raining. So they blew the hell out of it, and within a matter of a couple of weeks, because they were getting ready to move people out of their capital city, because they had 1% water left in their the reservoir system. When you're down to 1% and you're in the middle of a war, yeah, you're going to have to evacuate people because the water's running out. You live in a hot desert. So that's what was happening. And now their reservoirs are full. It went from 1% to nearly 100% in a matter of a couple of weeks after they blew up this installation that was doing this. So, this is something that people need to be aware of. They're doing weather modification and weather weaponization all over the world. It's being done domestically here in the United States. And it's being used to steer hurricanes, intensify storms, and cause natural disasters like the hurricane that ripped its way up through the Blue Ridge Mountains and nearly flooded out Evie, Oregon, and the entire town of, can't remember the name of Asheville, North Carolina.
Asheville, yeah. And what was weird about that is it almost came up here like it was about 3 states below me because it made its way up to Kentucky and Tennessee, which is those are like Midwestern East Coast states. They're like there's more closer to the Midwest, but close to the East Coast too. But like like the hurricanes should travel on the coast and like at the most like not far up into the mid. You know what I mean? Like that was really weird. That
They had evidence that they were using their radar systems in a certain type of sequencing where there's energy burst, and that interacts with whatever they're spraying in the atmosphere. So they've got a weather modification system. They can make it rain. They can do a lot of things, and they decided they're going to do things to hurt us. And wherever they can run people away, so they can open up a lithium mine, which I think that was the point of the hurricane. At least that's from what we understand. Because we know we don't get coverage. We don't know what's going on in Asheville and that surrounding area, the areas that were really badly affected. We don't know if those people are okay. We don't know if they're rebuilding. There's no coverage on it, just like, in Hawaii and places like that where you have these crazy mystery fires that just explode out of nowhere and leave whole cars, actually melt cars. I mean, extreme things that never happened. And of course, everyone wants to disbelieve, Like I saw a car where the aluminum wheels were melted off of it, and it was literally liquefied, and the liquid aluminum was running along the ground like tree roots, and the entire car was wiped out. But the grass around the car was intact, and it was in a cul-de-sac, and the car was like there was 2 cars parked up on the grass in a lot that hadn't been built on yet, but it was surrounded by houses, and none of the houses were touched. Because apparently it was an indirect hit. Something went wrong with the targeting system from the satellite. So it didn't burn the hell out of that part of the neighborhood, but it did melt 2 cars, but didn't damage the surrounding grass. And
Whoa.
Skeptics look at that and they either say, well, that's AI, it's fake, or well, fires do that. And everybody I showed, and nobody believed me. They're like, fires do that all the time, Nathan. You can have a grass fire melt a guardrail. That's fine. That happens all the time. So stop questioning things. So this is what I deal with. So, when it comes to talking about the abductions and things like that, it's just like, how far do I want to dig my hole with these people? So I leave the topic alone. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying about V2K and how it's been used to socially engineer the population. If you look up Tim Clement, the musical prophet, I believe he was from, I think it was Australia, or he was possibly New Zealand, where he was from. And he had the Trump prophecy. And this goes back to 15 years or more, maybe longer, maybe 2005, 2007. I don't remember, but and there were some more recent ones too, because he kept having these visions. But I saw an interview with him where he had this vision. He said he was in his garden and he was, I guess, weeding or something. And he saw this big vision open up behind him, and he turned around and he looked, and it was this man. He didn't see Trump, but he saw this man who was charismatic, and they had all of these people in support of him. And he said they were one. They felt like they were one. And he had this incredible vision that God had appointed this leader to lead America, and what he said was to restore the fortunes of Zion. So of course this is a church and a preacher that is very Zionist leaning, pro-Israel. So he's taken the Bible out of context, and he's supporting the Greater Israel Project before it was even announced. Because this goes back, he's long dead now. I think he's been dead close to a decade, or maybe a little less. But he was the first one that I know of that had the Trump prophecy. And then he starts talking about it, and he starts doing these musical sermons, which he was the musical prophet. So he would do these musical sermons. And, this is like a ritual, because the music invokes emotion and energy. And of course, when you start preaching to music, it makes it very powerful and convincing. It's kind of like when you watch those, when you watch a new age influencer and they hypnotize you with their eyes and they smile and they play the esoteric kind of ambient music in the background, and it's kind of hypnotizing you. It's the same sort of strategy.
Yeah.
Same thing with these videos on Facebook. It's like that really dismal sounding loop that keeps playing when people start talking about topics like we're talking about. You know what I mean? I'm sure you've heard it. I can't can't even imagine how it goes, but it's like a persistent tone, whatever. But he talked about Bill Gates and Donald Trump restoring the fortunes of Zion, which was the United States and Israel, as he referred to both of them as Zion. So, but he was telling people that Trump was going to be this great leader and he was going to do God's work and do all of these things. And then there was one or two or more other preachers over time, as we got closer to 2016, that went public because they too had these visions and these voices in their head and all of that. So what we're seeing is the use of psychotronic weapon systems to socially engineer the human population, specifically the population of the United States and abroad, because we're a global community now. So whatever happens here in the United States, whatever the USA does, people all over the world are tuned in. I was surprised to see how much US news is in the Australian news media. And the Canadian news media. It's like you can't escape. If you live in another country, if you're lucky enough to be out of the United States at this point, you can't escape what's going on here. It's always there. So everybody knows about Trump. So this is a global deception, but it's primarily aimed at the people of the United States, because we're the fools that vote. We're the fools that pay the taxes to make the wars possible. And all of the death and destruction. We're funding the international terrorism that the CIA has been drumming up for decades. So, we have to be the target for the epicenter for the bullshit propaganda. And it's gotten to the point where it's beyond most people's comprehension, because they're using psychotronic weapon systems to brainwash us, and they're doing it politically. They're brainwashing the religious communities. The mainstream religious communities are being brainwashed by this stuff. People in politics are being brainwashed by voice to skull, by this technology. And of course, nobody gets it more than this community. We're the ones that get it. We're the testing ground for this stuff. And then you have all the unfortunate TIs. Most of them had nothing to do with any of this stuff. It just got selected somehow to be a test subject. For research and development purposes, because eventually, and it's already started, eventually this is going to be above board. We're going to have a social credit score. We're going to be controlled by AI, and it's going to be enforced not just by financial sanctions and restrictions. It's going to be enforced by directed energy attacks and remote mind control. And you don't need a live handler on a headset listening to your thoughts, plugged into your body's physiology remotely to do it. It's AI can do it. AI is because they're using extraterrestrial AI from these programs. They've got technology exchanges, so they've been building this infrastructure. So the mark of the beast system is far more than just economic, coercion, where you have to take a chip and then you can't buy or sell anything unless you have the chip, because cash is no longer in existence. It's all digital. We're moving into that very soon, by the way. So it's much more than that. It's mind control to the fullest extent. It's being plugged into a central quantum AI system to where it monitors everything and punishes you accordingly for thought crimes. So there'll be no freedom. There'll be no independence. There'll be no independent free thought. They want to control everything, and they talk about it openly, and there's very little pushback because most people don't believe it's happening. That's the real deception here, is how do you get, and the real challenge is how do you educate the public? And the people that are getting it the most are being discredited because there's a whole process of counterintelligence, a whole operation of counterintelligence that's going into our community, and it's disrupting the flow of information, and it's ruining research. It's distorting the perception of people looking from the outside looking in. They look at us like a bunch of crackpots, because who do they get when they look this stuff up? They get the honeypots first. So what we have essentially is they have primed us into accepting the Trump regime. At first, it was looking good. At first, it had promise. People believed in it. And the first term was the setup. The first term was basically the president against the media, against the Congress, against his own party. And then it looked like it was a grassroots movement and all of these people. I mean, I went to one Trump event for an organization called the Rouge Pack, and they became Trump apologists. They were at first they were against Trump because they knew that Melania actually was one of Jeffrey Epstein's escorts. So there was a guy named Webster Tarpley, and Webster Tarpley came out with this information and was sued by Donald Trump early on. I think it was before he got elected or shortly after. Trump won the lawsuit. Webster Tarpley's dead now. They probably didn't pay any of the money because he passed away, but they sued him for a large amount of money and won. And for what we know now, it appears to be true. So the first lady essentially was a prostitute. I mean, this is the type of thing that we're dealing with here. We're dealing with a man that is unfit for office, who doesn't pay his bills. He doesn't pay his debts to people. He takes advantage of people. He's made around roughly $3 billion since he's been in office in the second term in 2 years. $3 billion. That means when you compare him to the other administrations, they pale by comparison with the amount of insider, profiteering that's been going on. So I would say that the Trump administration now, unfortunately, no matter how much promise it showed before, has become the nation's most corrupt presidency. And I think we're in deep shit. And people need to wake up to this, but we can't because we've got the majority of this community has been funneled into honeypot hubs of information where information is being fed through voice to skull tech. And I've talked about this all week. And this is what I've been talking about last couple of podcasts and a couple before that. So it has a lot to do with what I'm going to be doing on my own channel. But, we've been engineered, socially engineered, regardless, and we don't even realize it. We're like a deer in the headlights. So they've engineered everything. And what they're doing is they're engineering consent through psychotronic weapon systems. So going back to what I was initially saying, when they told me that, they did all of this to me, all the targeting, the tissue damage, the remote mind control, the scrambling my personality, mixing it with alters, changing my sexual orientation back and forth, and doing all this miserable shit to me, that was to preserve the continuity of government, because there are assets that they have, such as myself and others, that they are concerned about, that if we ever all woke up, that, we could either regain our abilities that they've been harnessing, or at least we'd wake up and be charismatic leaders within, our, communities, wherever we live at, because this is a global thing. And then we would start to get people motivated to change things. So, I'm sorry to tell them, but I'm going to be doing that. I may be one of the few, but there's going to be more, and hopefully we can turn this around. But I'm not that optimistic, but I'm not going to give up. So I'm going to keep at it. But when you do this stuff, there's consequences. So there's a program that I was put in, which is refers to basically an iceberg. When you think about an iceberg, Rob, you think of like deep freeze and heavy weight, So like, do you remember the name of the program?
Project Glacier.
Project, right. So anyway, they told me that I was in this program a couple of years ago, but they wouldn't tell me what it was. And this was the kind of the thing where it was like, you're in this program. And I'm like, well, what is it? And this is a voice to skull communication that I had, because I was dealing with them up to 16 hours a day or longer, depending on how many hours of sleep that I got. I slept 6 hours. I had 18 hours of V2K. And this went on for quite a while. It was kind of intermittent for a period of time, for a couple of years. And then it got to the point, once the mask came off and they started to speak, and the facade was gone, it was several hours a day off and on, and eventually it became constant, because not only were they doing it and trying to make it constant, I was engaging them. And I was engaging them basically with kind of like reverse psychological warfare, because there's only one way to deal with these a-holes that get into your head like this, and you need to give it back to them. So I studied their strategies, their methodologies, what they were doing, and I gave it back to them. And I made their job very, very difficult. And in the process of that, they had to kind of like re-strategize on what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. Because before, the spiritual deceptions were working, but only temporarily. And I would break protocol, I would see through it, and then they try to shift me into something else. So we went from a cult to, to various different pseudo spiritual escapades where, I would get involved with somebody or get involved with a couple of people, try to form a support system. And then the entire thing would turn out to be something that was engineered, and it would completely fall apart and everybody would get targeted. So I went through a lot of those types of situations. And now, when I say a lot, I don't mean there was a lot of them. I just mean that each one lasted a couple of years. So it wasn't like I was blowing through these. I was going through a series of them. But the positive side of this is that I learned from it. I educated myself from it. And it's what they said to me is that, how dare you? You've taken everything we've done you and turned it into your advantage, which is what you have to do as a TI. You have to find a way to overcome them. You have to find a way to take what they're doing to you and turn it around and put it to your advantage. So if they're going to attack you, you need to find out a way to attack them. And the best way to do that is to go public and be heard. And there's more and more people doing this now. I'm seeing this more and more within the echo chamber of Facebook. I'm getting feeds from different people who are targeted individuals, people I haven't talked to. Maybe I will, maybe I'll try to in the future after I've got, my channel going, so people have something to look at. They're not just looking at old videos. But I'm seeing these people go out and take the chance and say, hey, I'm being hit with psychotronic weapons. And that's what we need to do. More and more people need to do this. Not just that, I was unaware that I was a TI for a long, long time. I thought for a while I was a contactee, and I didn't know it was a MyLab. Ultimately, I was really a MyLab, and every MyLab is a TI, no matter how you look at it. They're being targeted. So the reason for the targeting is to keep you asleep and keep you suppressed. So that program that I was in was an experimental program. It was designed to suppress me. Are you still there, Rob? Because I can't see you. Rob, you there? I don't know if anybody's watching this. I don't know if I'm still in the air. Let's see.
Totally true and real. There's only one problem.
I apologize to everybody who's trying to watch this. We just got cut off here. It looks like I'm live and he isn't. So I'm going to wait for a moment or two and just have a drink. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Hopefully Rob appears again. It's going to be difficult to do this without him. Now it just becomes a live stream with me. So anyway, I guess I'll try to keep talking. The project that I was in was designed, it was for research and development purposes, but it was also for heavy suppression of people who were MyLabs, who break the protocol, break the programming, or the mind control doesn't stick or work for very long periods of time. So for those people that are MyLabs, the ones that haven't gone public, and you find yourself sick, chronically sick, unable to work. Some people can't even, aren't even able to get out of bed. You may be in this program. And I've thought about this and I've looked into it. I've looked for a pattern as to why people are affected more, or some are targeted more than others. I really don't know, other than to say that it's possible that the ones that get the heaviest targeting have the most potential to invoke social change. So apparently I fall into that category, at least they thought I did. So I myself think I have potential, but at the same time, with all of the things that they've done to me and the problems that I have, and it just slows me down to the point where I don't feel that I'm effective. But anyway, I'd like to just wait a minute here. Hopefully Rob comes back. Let me see if I can send him a text. Let's see. I'm actually locked up. Let's see. I'm actually locked up. Now there's actually a delay of a couple of seconds. Let me see if I can reach out to Rob. I don't want to play my voice over here. Hopefully he gets this on his phone. Well, I don't know. This is weird. We're just going to have to go solo today. So anyway, I guess we can just start talking about certain types of targeting. Try to make sense of this whole thing. Okay, so most people are familiar with voice to skull. They think, a lot of cases it's just the voice in your head. The voices can mimic your own inner voice. They can actually give you a different inner voice. Like there was a period of time where every time I would think to myself, I heard a woman's voice. This was when they were trying to mess with me and trying to blend a female alter with my personality. So that was one of the things that have been done to me, and that's to destabilize relationships. There you go. Hey, what happened to you?
I had to get out of that studio for a second. I just came outside to have, get some air.
Oh, just let me know when you do that again, because I was like, I didn't know what was going on. I was checking my phone, and I got all these people in the chat, and they're wondering what's going on with you.
I'm okay. Yeah, I figured. I don't know. I thought you just keep talking. I didn't think. I wasn't leaving. I'd never leave. Yeah.
All right. Anyway, did you hear anything that I was saying as you were making your exit?
A little bit, but yeah, we'll go. You go. Yeah, go ahead. We'll pick up wherever you were. You know what I mean? Yeah, like
break it up a little bit.
Oh.
Yeah, I was talking about the project or the program that I was under. This is not a program that you're in as far as an alter. This is for the current self, you, the here and now, and it's a program of extreme asset suppression. So they gave me the name. Just kind of threw it at me, but didn't elaborate. And it took a long time. It was one of those things that intuitively I had to keep pursuing. And eventually I realized what the program was. And it's for research and development. And it's to target people that are extreme MyLabs, or I wouldn't say extreme MyLabs, but MyLabs that are very resistant to mind control. Like they can see through the deceptions. Yeah. So they're not going to be satisfied with, whatever pseudo spiritual escapade that they put you on, or belief system. Eventually you're going to see through it. So every time that they put me through something like that, sometimes it would last 7 months, 6-7 months, like in the case of the internet cult that I was involved with, or it lasted a couple of years, but I got through it. And so what they did is they put me through a controlled awakening. And I've talked about this many times in your podcast, Rob. So I don't know if I'm going to bore people with this, but tonight was kind of a mishmash of just things to talk about. And plus I'm tired. So, but what I want people to know is that what they've done is they have picked people out that they want to target more than others. And they have engineered what we have. So what we have is we have a corrupt government that's not responsive to the people. The people have supported Donald Trump under a PSYOP. They started this back in at least back in the early after 2000 with Kim Clement using voice to skull. So they've manufactured all of this support for Trump first with the religious people, by doing the entire Trump, the whole Trump prophecy deception. Then we get into, the QAnon PSYOP, which started, I guess, around 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. I may be wrong about that, but that's been ongoing. And that was to get people to support Trump, people that would definitely be skeptical that anybody coming out of the establishment was going to do anything positive for them. So QAnon has done more damage than anything else that I've seen yet, because now it's being morphed into cosmic QAnon. I've talked about that before, to where we're actually merging politics we're actually getting into exopolitics, but it's false exopolitics. We have all of these fake psyops going on and all this bad information being pumped into the community. And then the algorithms push everybody into those honeypots, to the point where real research, critical thinking, and everything else goes right out the window. So we just become a bunch of serfs that believe literally everything that's sent our way. If it sounds spiritual, If it sounds like the last stuff we were believing in, then it's got to be true. And we just keep rolling with it and rolling with it and rolling with it. And the entire purpose of it is to get us to believe everything that they're doing is for our best interest. So I guess at some point, maybe they'll even have a psyop where people will channel ETs and they'll be telling them the best thing for you is to not have health care and Social Security. That's a reptilian scam. So maybe we'll get into that kind of stuff too.
I mean, it could go there, man. You know what I mean?
Well, the sky's the limit at this point.
What are your thoughts on the whole disclosure thing? Like, what do you think they're trying to do with that? Like, do you think that, I mean, obviously it's not like, like real, like meat and potatoes type disclosure. It's like really, watered down, flips on the screen type shit,
Well, they keep alluding that there's a big press conference coming with Donald Trump in July, I believe. Remains to be seen. But what I see is it's simply another psyop. They needed another distraction. But it's more than just that, because we've gotten further down this rabbit hole to where, most of the public believes that there are extraterrestrials. They're not that ignorant anymore. They're not even entertaining the absurd Drake equation, which was another excuse for the quackademics to just bring up the Drake equation every time the question was posed. Hey, do you think that there's that life out in outer space? They would go to the Drake equation because it was comfortable, it was politically correct. And thankfully, we don't hear much about that anymore. But I believe this is a psyop that's designed to lead us into eventually the partial admission of this. And I believe they're going to they're going to portray the extraterrestrial presence as our saviors at some point. But that's a gradual process. But right now, this is interesting that you brought this up, because there's a lot of honeypot influencers out there that are getting voice to skull information, or they're being handled by military MyLab handler groups, and they're being fed this complete, you can call it an itinerary, but I would just say it's a carefully crafted storyline that seamlessly fits in with the Trump prophecy moving forward. And it's loaded with the whole, everything about QAnon is in there. It's loaded with QAnon talking points. So they've blended all this together into kind of this seamless, never-ending psyop. And now we're into this false disclosure. And we've had some whistleblowers come forth that are paid by the government and supervised by the government. They've got military handlers. And, we all know who these are because they've been all over the television. They've been all in, cable TV channels and podcasts and everything like that. They get no shadow banning, no targeting. Lou Elizondo is one of them. There's plenty of others. There's a whole handful of them. And so we've had them. And we're kind of moving into this thing now where a lot of the more esoteric, more kind of outlandish honeypot, I guess you call them influencers. And a lot of this is surrounded by Michael Salla. Michael Salla is a big hub for this. So what we're seeing is, I guess I'm just going to name names. JP Missions, for example, has stated multiple times that we're getting this big reveal coming. Okay, we're getting this big disclosure. We're going to have med beds. We're going to have free energy. We're going to have all this technology. We're going to be a spacefaring civilization in a matter of a few months to a few years max. So what I want is I want for all of the people that have been paying attention to what he's saying to pay attention to what the government's doing and compare the two. And when it doesn't happen, what I want everybody to do is abandon him and abandon Salla and abandon the rest of these people and seek out credible people who have credible evidence and information that makes sense, because we need to get back on track. The solution to disclosure starts with cleansing our own community. And some of these people have good intentions. I'm not saying that JP is a bad person. I'm not saying that he's lying. I'm saying that he's being mind controlled. There's a lot of other people that are being mind controlled as well. And it's gotten to the point of critical mass now. There's so many of them. They've dominated disclosure. People in this community, and I've said this before, do not understand how counterintelligence works. They're very deficient in this area of expertise.
Look at
So
this comment, Nate. This is from Matthew Morning earlier. He says, something seems wrong with Sala. He believes, sorry, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, Nate.
no, go ahead.
I saw this comment earlier and I was like, we'll probably hit on this at some point because so I remembered, I put it in the back of my mind. I just went back to it now. Matthew Morning says, something is wrong with Sala. He believes literally anything anyone tells him now. He says it's kind of weird. And then, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not the only one. Journey to Truth's doing the same thing, and they're working with Salah. So this is what's going on, really. And I know this because I've been through it myself. I'm a victim of mind control. They can inject thoughts into your head. They can remotely influence your behavior. They can affect your judgment. They've done it to me. Okay, and I'm very resistant to this stuff. So if they can do it to me and keep me going for years on end, then they can do it to anybody, especially those people that aren't aware of it. If you're not aware of what they can do, you're much more susceptible to it. So you have the allure of the money, because there's no money to be made in telling the truth. Money is made when the algorithms support your work. That's when you can make money at something. That's when you can afford to have profitable conferences with large gatherings. You can get Patreon channels that make money. You can get donations. You can make money off of ad revenue on YouTube and Rumble, and you can make a business out of it. And that is a problem for the people that have gained success in this genre of information. So when you have that entrapment right there, combined with the influence that people aren't aware of, then you start to create honeypots, and this is the problem. It's possible that Dr. Sala doesn't even realize what he's doing. It wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. I don't think he's a bad person. I think he's a person like I was, who's been mind controlled and led down this primrose path of doing the bidding for the handlers.
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate, and that's the reality that we are having to deal with here, and it's affecting. The other thing I need to explain to people is, and I've said this before, and I've said it in private as well in recent conversations, is that when people hear me talk about this, a lot of them probably think it's only that they're only really hitting certain people with this the hardest, but everybody's getting it, because, like I said, if you've got people who are falling for a psyop that's using voice to skull and psychotronic weapons to support Donald Trump in an election, such as with Kim Clement, that affects a lot of people. It affects the whole country. It affects people in churches, religious people. But when it comes down to people who are, directly affected by it, I would say most of the people in this community that pay attention to this, especially the experiencers. If you're an experiencer, you're getting hit with this stuff. Everybody is. And they can do it because they don't have to prioritize who they go after. It isn't just the people who go public or the ones they think that might, or the ones that they know that are going to cause problems somewhere down the road for them. It's everybody. Okay. When you tune into this type of material, you're being surveilled. They're watching you. They're creating a database. They're collecting information. They're collecting names. Okay. The internet has been set up. It's been weaponized. And it's weaponized to figure out who you are and what you believe and categorize you so they can later go after you if you cause problems. It's a control grid. It's a control system. So the mind control kicks in once you've laid a digital paper trail for yourself and you start paying attention to this. You can be subject to being targeted. And the way it works is that unless you're doing something that, really puts a thorn in their side, you're not necessarily going to get hit with directed energy and what you think is the typical psychotronic warfare experience. You're going to get hit with things that just nudge you in different directions and influence you. And sometimes it's indirect. Sometimes it's influenced by someone that you're watching and paying attention to. This is why disinformation is so dangerous, because it gets large groups of people to go against their best interest and harm theirself by supporting things that are destructive towards them and others. And that's what we've got in this country with the Trump presidency, but also with just everything that we're doing. So, and then of course you have the social engineering. the class warfare, the homophobia, all of these things that the media puts us through. It goes in cycles. It's all to divide us, to keep us ignorant, and to make us hate. And that's the biggest. If they can make everybody hate, then they've got the most control that they possibly could ever imagine. And that's the goal. They want to make us a degenerate society so they could bring in the solution, which is an AI control grid. But anyway, yeah, people are being manipulated. And how do you get through to these people? Well, some people you're not going to get through to. But the best way to deal with this is turn it off. Stop listening to it. If somebody's putting out bad information and they have a little bit of good information, watch those influencers that put out the good information on other platforms. Speak with your dollars and cents. Speak with your attention. Stop watching the garbage. Okay, that's what we need to do. And we can be effective at this because if we stop paying attention to these people, they're going to be forced to either change what they're saying and change their ways, or they're going to go away, and they're going to make room for the rest of those who have something valuable to contribute, those who make logical sense. And then we can really kind of purify the disclosure stream of information, because it isn't just when somebody puts out bad information, it discredits everything that we do, all the legitimate work, the research, and all of the sacrifices that people put themselves through to go public, to say, hey, this has happened to me. You're not the only one. It happened to me too. And there's a lot of us. It discredits every one of us. And, as far as JP goes, I think he's having these experiences, but they're using him. And unfortunately, he's completely naive. He thinks that someone like me is hating on him. Not at all. I'm trying to wake people up. And it's an upward hill of a job. I mean, it's an upward, it isn't easy, put it that way. And you don't make a lot of friends. You're not invited to conferences when you talk like this. People in podcasts, they don't want to necessarily put you on because you're making trouble for them, because then you're going to have other guests that are going to say, hey, he was talking about me or whatever. I don't like that guy. If you're going to put him on, I'm not going on. And naturally, they're going to have bigger followings because the algorithms make that, they give them bigger followings. So, the people with the largest social media footprint pretty much dictate, in many cases, who goes on what podcast, because they can just say, I'm not doing it if so-and-so's doing it. But that's how the system works. But that's how the community works. So it's really up to the viewers, to make the decision. And I would say tune it out, because that's the only way we're going to stop it. I mean, I'm going public and talking about this, but also too, what I'm doing is, if you noticed, I'm not going out there. I'm not slandering people. I'm not spreading hate. I'm not calling people names and insulting them, calling them frauds. I'm sympathizing with them, with everybody that's going through this, because I was there myself. Okay, I'm emphasizing, and I'm putting myself in their shoes because I've been there. So that's what people need to do. They need to explain what's happening to these other folks so that they wake up. And then like I've said before here in other podcasts, when it ends for them and things get bad and they become targeted, we all need to be there for them, because we don't need another David Wilcock tragedy. That was a perfect example of what happens when somebody rises to, when their star rises to the point where they're all over television, at least the History Channel. They're well known, but they're being used as an influencer to put out false information. And he was putting out QAnon and a lot of stuff that wasn't accurate. And it was being fed to him by military handlers. And I guarantee you, he wasn't talking to the Archangel Michael. He was talking to either AI, part-time AI, but for the most part, he was talking to somebody like I was talking to when I thought I was talking with Andromeda ETs and Orion Hajayan ETs and all of that. So they turned the man into a honeypot. And then when he was no longer useful, they destroyed him, systematically destroyed him. And, that was the end of it. He ended his life because everything fell apart. And if you're dealing with the Archangel Michael, you're going to get some mercy. You're going to get help. You're not going to get that. And I just don't understand why people fall for this stuff. Because I mean, it's it isn't just mind control. It's just people are naive and they're desperate. They're looking for something in their life to make it fulfilling. So they find these influencers and they get roped into the good news. And then they, it's sad. It really, really is. And it hurts more people than just the influencer. It hurts a lot of people. So if I got to be the bad guy, then that's the way it is. And I'll be the bad guy until I'm not the bad guy anymore. But I've been there myself. I've been a victim of this shit. And I've been put through a lot of things. So if you want to talk about, Rob, if you want to discuss some of these ways, the ways that they target you and ways to combat it, I guess we can start going through that, because I was starting to talk about that while you were on your hiatus as you're walking outside. Do you have any questions?
There was one question from the audience. This is from Nico. She says, let me see if I can put it. Says, is the surveillance through global satellite DNA or targeted through direct energy, like by longitude, latitude?
Okay, the way it works is, the way I understand it, is that our genetics have an electromagnetic frequency that's like a fingerprint for each and every one of it. So your body is an electromagnetic frequency cage for your consciousness. You're locked into it. This is the experience machine, basically, what you're in. And once they get your electromagnetic frequency address, just think of it as an address on a network, like a computer node on a network. Once they get that, they can remotely target you anywhere in the world. And it really comes down to, I think, probably if you're in a country that doesn't have agreements for you to be targeted in that country, you may not be targeted as possible. I know, I'm not sure. There was a TI that was traveling around the world for a period of time, spending his savings, and he said the only country that he wasn't targeted in was Russia, but he wasn't allowed to stay there. Now that could have lasted temporarily, but at least he did get some relief there. But they can hit you through satellites, through remote systems with that electromagnetic frequency address. And once they've got it, and it's very easy to get, I mean, they've got technology that can sweep over an area and just pick up everybody's electromagnetic frequency footprint or energetic fingerprint. And they can also use psychic assets who can read your social media posts. And then it's kind of like remote viewing. As soon as they lock on to you with their psyche, with their psionic abilities, then of course they're augmented. They have an implant in them and they interface with a computer. You can get it that way. That's another way to do it. But a lot of us are already cataloged by the ET presence anyway. And I think everybody is. It depends on where the information or where that frequency address is actually, where it comes from, whether it comes from the extraterrestrial presence or it comes through technology that the military is using, where they get the addresses themselves. What I mean by addresses is your EM fingerprint. And that's how they target you. So once they get that, they can hit you with directed energy. They can do thought injections. They can override your behavior. If you have alters, they can blend those. And another thing that's very effective on people is that when you're asleep, okay, and I'm not talking about implanted dreamscapes, when you're sleeping, they can program you. And sometimes they'll program you to where you have dreams that are very vivid and lucid, where they test the programming. So you may think that you're having this profound spiritual dream, but in fact, it's actually them inducing it in a way that they can test the programming that they've already put into you to see if you execute the program in the dream itself. It's kind of a way of testing you before you do it in reality outside the dream state. So they're very sophisticated. And the control system essentially was an extraterrestrial one, because we've had multiple civilizations that have been very advanced in the past that have been wiped out with staged cataclysms. So the extraterrestrial system has always been in place to manipulate us, creating false religions and spiritual events and things like that over the course of human history to keep us asleep and following these religions and under their control. But whenever we reach a point of like societal sophistication and we reach a certain level of technological sophistication to where, like we have, today with a military that has tech, and we have corrupt government systems that the ETs cultivate and socially engineer, then they merge their tech with the human tech, and then you have a kind of a seamless type of new world order sort of scenario taking place. And I don't know how far they've gotten with this in the past, but I do know that what they're working towards now is not going to involve a cataclysm. It's going to involve a different type of cataclysm, which is the one where they do the AI takeover. So the AI control grid is going into effect. Eventually, once they've got total control over everyone, then you'll start to see disclosure, but it's going to be in the form of this is your saviors. So anyone pushing the return of Enki is being fed more BS because, and I'll say that there's lots of Enkis out there. Michael Lee Hill is Enki. I know another person who thinks he's Enki. There's plenty of Enkis out there. So Enki has come back multiple times through other people, regardless if the memories are accurate or not. There's plenty of other Enkis out there. So I'm not concerning myself with Enki coming back and then starting a new world religion and being humanity's savior, because that is absolute bullshit. And it's, it's not going to happen. And if it does, it'll be one of the greatest deceptions the human race has ever encountered. And we've probably experienced this before, but we may experience it again, and it's not going to be positive. We deserve to have our own governments free of the extraterrestrial presence that represent us, not them and their agenda. And the only way we're going to get there is by a renaissance of the heart and soul, and we have to push these bastards out of our government. And we've got to change things. And that starts with the change has to start within. And I've said that before. We've got to start learning to love one another again. And it's going to be very difficult because most of the population is completely traumatized at this point in one form or another, whether they want to admit to it or not. Every day that you have to get up and get in your car and drive to work and live this lifestyle of basically servitude to the tax man and fear of debt and homelessness. It's trauma. It's traumatizing you. We live in a toxic culture. Every country has a toxic culture, and it's weaponized. It isn't just the Middle East that has a toxic culture. All of us do. It's different flavors of the same rotten shit sandwich that we all have to endure to eat. So that's the biggest problem here.
No,
Anything you want to add?
no, I'm just listening. You're on a roll, man. You're on a roll.
Well, I feel like I'm just kind of repetitively repeating myself because I don't have a lot to talk about tonight. But we can get into the targeting a little bit because what I'm going to be doing on my social media project is going into this in detail, but I'm going to have a lot more time to plan it out instead of doing it on the fly like this. But I've talked about the creation of false religious beliefs. I've talked about that. I've talked about how they foment basically engineered political movements using this technology. And, they use the social media algorithms to suppress information, promote other information that benefits the agenda. I've talked about that before. So, so what else could I talk about? So we can get into some of the other things that they do to you when they target you.
Dude, the targeting I've dealt with is like, it's just annoying. It's not like anything to be feared of. It's really relentless. Like, it's like they try to turn it on, whatever it is. It's like they're trying to send entities and they try to send them like, I don't know, man, like 24/7 around the clock. I mean, like some days it's pretty ridiculous. Some days are good. Some days are bad. It's like, I don't even know what. At first, I thought it was paranormal. Then I thought it was the government. Then I think it's the government and paranormal. And it's like, and then I keep trying to clear myself, and it's like an ongoing thing. I'm not even going to pretend to know what it is. Tommy Edwards thinks it's like they're accessing me through the W band, which he says Sabrina Wallace talks about and stuff like that.
What is that?
The WN is the Wireless Body Area Network. Wireless Body Area Network.
Well, that's basically what I'm talking about, accessing your EM address, your EM frequency.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that makes sense.
Well, what they do, Rob, is they're using parasitic entities. I've done podcasts with you and others on here that have been part of that, and I've seen this myself. I have a relative that has been suffering from a lot of addictions, alcohol, cocaine, other things. And they literally put an attachment on him. He had others. There was a total of 3 that I saw, but one of them was connected to a military hive mind, AI hive mind. And I've talked about this before. And this was to influence him in a negative way towards me in regard to going public and having these discussions online. So I would have to put up with drunken phone calls that were insulting and just very abrasive in regard to to what I'm doing. And that's something that they do. So what they do is they are able to harness parasitic spiritual entities, or actually, and also create synthetic ones. And then they connect these via a tether, which is basically like a silver life force cord. But what it looks like, what these things look like, it looks like a piece of rotten intestine or a power line just stretching off into the abyss. And it goes to a mass energy, like a big black mass of energy that's being controlled through military ETAI. And then they use these parasitic entities in a weaponized manner. So they send them to people who they want to target. And then that's likely what is happening to you. Now, would you say that this has really gotten going after you started interviewing people who were my labs and really got your podcast going in this direction?
It started happening like two years ago. You know what I mean? So yeah, you could say that, but it's also like the more I talk about targeted individuals too, and like black ops stuff and how it all ties in. You know what I mean? Like it's all that. But I mean, yeah, absolutely. And then like I even had an incident. I've talked about this many times. Like it was really weird, Nate. I think I've told you about this. I'll tell it again. Like, so in case anything happens to me, like, and by the way, I would never hurt myself. And it's not even that bad. It's just more of an annoyance than anything. But like, what had happened was like 2 years ago, I think I was receiving like energy healing or something. And then something like foreign was coming into my space, like something like really foreign was like coming into my space, and it was like it felt like it was scanning my head, or it felt like it was trying to make contact with my head. And this would have happened like a couple nights in a row. So finally I was like, well, I don't know what the fuck this is, you know what I mean? And finally one night it made contact with my head. It pierced my crown. It sent a burning sensation into my crown. My eyes rolled back in my head. I like started going into like convulsions. I'm not kidding you. I shit you not. I swear to God on my dad's grave. And then I like snapped. Somehow I snapped out of it. You know what I mean? And like I just jumped out of bed and I was like, what in the living F was that? And then ever since then, like on and off, I've had this like weird like magnetic attachment that'll like attach to my crown, attach to my ear, attach to my neck. You know what I mean? Like it'll lock itself around my ear and throw off my equilibrium. It makes me feel dumb. And not makes me feel dumb, but it makes me dumb. Like it makes me like it clogs my head. You know what I mean? It'll get you questioning like, decisions you're making and stuff like that. So it tries to manipulate you. They feel like parasites on you. They feel like they're like, it's literally like an astral parasite, That's what I'm dealing with.
Yeah, that's a weaponized form of, it's a very advanced form of psychotronic weapon targeting. But they're using parasitic entities to do it using what I call transdimensional AI. That's one of the strategies, and that's actually something that's very widely used in this community. It affects a lot of people. Most of them aren't even aware that they have these attachments. So there's attachments that affect your judgment to where you're not able to trust other people. You're paranoid. Or you see things in a kind of an obfuscated way. There's thought forms, or not thought forms, but there's attachments that'll affect your judgment. So that's one type. You have others that actually go further than that. They not only override your thoughts and affect them and change your judgment and change your belief system in ways that you can't determine, but they also project thought forms into other people. So I've had that experience too, where I've talked to someone and they were very much against another person that I know. And, while they were talking to me and telling me all of these bad things, that most of it wasn't true, I was being hit with literal information. It was like thought forms being pushed into my head. And I instantly, after a few seconds, I started to realize what was happening, because it wasn't just that I was hearing information that contradicted what I already knew. because we all have those experiences every day. Somebody's telling you something that you know isn't true, that they think's true, and then you're waiting for them to stop talking before you rebut it. So, if you remember how that feels, like physiologically or just emotionally, but consider it to where, think about like, not only are they talking, but you're also seeing energy come up their back. You're seeing the attachment attached to their lumbar region, like in this case, but it was projecting this energy over their top of their head. And it was coming right at me. And it doesn't matter if you're sitting across from someone, if you're on the phone, if you're in a, excuse me, if you're in a chat or if you're in a video conference call, the effect's the same. It doesn't matter how far you are away or how separated you are with your means of communication. It could be sitting right in front of you happening. But it started to pump into my head. And how I got out of that situation is I pulled God's energy in and it neutralized it. Then I told the person that, look, you've got an attachment. At which point, instead of them asking me any details, like, what do you mean I've got an attachment? Well, how do you know that? They immediately blocked me on Facebook. They just left, right.
After hearing my case, does it sound like to you like mine's like more? Because like to me, like after telling you like what happened, this incident, I've told it many times on my podcast. Like when I go over it in my head, it sounds something like more like robotic or like AI. You know what I mean? Like an etheric AI thing that came in and made contact with me, pierced my crown with some kind of weird like AI shit. Now I'm like, like I'm like a magnet to like parasitic like weird fucking things like that, like like that don't give a shit about like what you say to it. You know what I mean? Like people said, yo, you got to get in your power. I'm like, okay, I do that. You know what I mean? And I can clear them sometimes. A lot of times I can clear them, but it takes a lot of my energy. You know what I mean? Whereas some people I know, they can just clear them right there, but then they reattach. You know what I mean? And then it's like some days are really good, some days are like, you know what I mean? And then it's like, but like I'm still me. I'm still like 100% myself because I'm strong and I have good discernment. You know what I mean? And like, I don't know. Like if I start acting really weird, then you guys might have to like, I don't know.
What I noticed is that just before the Full Disclosure Now conference, when it happens, that there's a wave of fighting. There's a lot of people start arguing about 6 months before the conference, and I'm sure you've noticed that too. There's just a lot of turmoil that takes place, and it's not because there's a conference coming, just that alone. It's because there's a conference coming, and the handlers who are affecting everyone are trying to drum up problems and get people fighting to break down the cohesiveness, to make the conference either not happen or to make it happen in such a way that it drums up a lot of resentment and people start disliking, the people holding the conference or the one speaking and everything. It's total sabotage. And that's what happens. And, I've been a victim of it. You've been a victim of it. There's a long list of people that have been a victim of it. And, it's just something we have to deal with. This is what they do. So, and for those people that don't know that these networks exist, they do. This is why we have so many problems. It isn't just censorship online. It isn't just algorithmic suppression of information. We're being hit with psychotronic weapons all the time. Everyone in this community is getting it to some degree or another, either directly or a small minority may be getting it secondhand. Or maybe that may be the larger population of the people who just watch this information. But they're being affected by people that are being hit with it. So if the person being hit with it isn't able to discern things properly and are giving bad information out, it's spreading to other people. And then they're believing something that's incorrect. So for a period of time, they've adopted whatever information they've gotten, and it's affecting their judgment. It's affecting their worldview. And that's, of course, the goal. The goal is to divide and conquer and to keep people ignorant and just keep people running in circles, chasing their tail. But the best, for me early on when I did is just sheer intent. You can remove implants by yourself through intent. But the thing is that if the more destabilized you are emotionally, if you have addictions, whatever they may be, it could be overeating, it could be cigarettes, it could be alcohol, it could be some other drug, it could be overuse of cannabis. You could be addicted to video games. You could have sexual behaviors that are unhealthy, that are addictive. all of these things factor in, and they all tend to be hooks for these types of entities to hook into you and make things worse. They open types of behaviors that are self-destructive and emotions that are self-destructive, and unhealed trauma is all openings for these things. So you have to really fortify your defenses by healing yourself, for one, but that's not enough, because you have to be able to, when I talk about oversoul integration, which is digging into your subconscious and getting to your original core self. And that means busting up and breaking away these overlays that they've given you. So like I said, one of the things that they do to people is they give you a false identity overlay. This is one of the most common problems with people in our community, is that they begin to believe that there's something they're not. Now, there's a lot of us who've been extraterrestrials in other lifetimes and are now here under amnesia. So it resonates with somebody when they find out that they are belonging to some other culture someplace off planet somewhere else. But the common practice of the handlers is to get you to believe that you're something that you're not. It could be, they could tell you you're a Pleiadian, and maybe you are, but they'll tell you you're somebody other than who you are. They'll give you a false identity. And if you believe in that false identity because you're not doing the oversoul reconnection work, and you're listening to them, because this is a private journey. It's not something that you need spirit guides for. It's not something you need ET mentors for. You have to do this yourself. They're not going to help you. And if they do, I mean, you can get help from them, but it's, I see it more commonly. It's more common to be deceived than it is to be helped, from what I've seen. And I haven't gotten any help from them, except for there's been some invisible help that comes and goes that doesn't have much of a communication with me. That would be the extra dimensional ones. So you can get help, and you will, but the thing is that as long as you embrace the negative, and you basically go along with the programming, if you're dealing with ETs or handlers that are negative, you're not going to be able to get any help, because they're going to take the place of it, and you're going to reject anything that comes in that positively helps you, because the goal of the handlers is to get you to believe that any help you get is them. So once you become wise to their game, then that plays to their advantage if you discount and reject any other form of help that comes in because you think it's the handlers. So they do a lot of bait and switch with you. So I've had that as well. And how they get you with a lot of these behaviors that are self-destructive, including emotional loops that they'll put you through, is when you're asleep, they'll program you. And that's something that's very difficult to deal with, because some people can block them when they're in their waking state, but when they go to sleep, their defense is shut right down, because they have to be consciously aware that they're being attacked. When you're asleep, it's all bets are off, unless you've got some sort of autonomous defense system, which has to, and then you have to do psionic shielding. And that's a whole nother topic. And it's very difficult to explain it, because if I were to try to explain how I did it, it would be, well, the only honest way to put it is that I got help. I got help in doing that. I reconnected with my oversoul. I connected back with God, not the God that they want you to believe in, the God of the Bible and so forth, but the real creator, the one that actually is working in each of us. And it really kind of comes down to one thing. And that is opening your heart to other people and being able to love again. And that requires healing. So when you can look at other people and see beauty, even in the worst person, when you can see something good in someone when the others can't, you're on the right track. So the real ascension is opening your heart back up. And for a lot of us, that's difficult to do because we've been hurt. And Rob, you're gone again. There you are.
I'm here. I'm just getting back into the house,
All right. I just wonder what happened to you, because I don't know if you're being knocked off the internet or what.
I'm going to switch back over to my computer. Give me 1 second. All right. I'm here, though. I'm not going anywhere.
I'll finish this energy drink that just splashed to my forehead. So.
So yeah, if you guys have any questions in the audience, put them in the chat for Nate, and I'll get to your question, and I'm sure he'll be happy to answer, any one of your questions here.
Now, some of the other ways that they can affect your mind in your waking state is essentially you'll be thinking of something you could be petting your cat or having a nice experience with somebody, and then you'll suddenly get this violent type of thought that comes into your head, like you're killing your cat, or you're punching someone in the face, or you're insulting someone. Like you look at a person, maybe they have a physical handicap or mental handicap, and normally you'd look at them and you'd see a person and you would have compassion for them, but you may be experiencing that, but all of a sudden this thought will intrude into your mind to where you look at them and you say something they say something derogatory in your own mind's voice. So I can blow my nose real quick. Sorry, guys. That's something that I had to deal with for a very long time. And even to this day, on occasion, I can sense that system, that AI system is trying to push it in. It doesn't get in anymore, but I can sense it happening. I can sense a type of distortion happening. And, because what I have is, and this is actually recent, I don't know if I've talked about this before, but I was talking to somebody who's very, very, very special person, is very close to me. And we were sharing, some text. And of course, it happened for a reason, because she needed to know. I was given a type of a shield. I felt a force, an energy come down through my crown, through the top of my head. And I could see in my mind's eye kind of a translucent white light type of cylinder surrounded me. And I had a nonverbal communication that basically said, they can't hurt you anymore, and it's time to go operational, which means it's time for me to start talking publicly in the way that I needed to do it, and in a way that I couldn't do it before. The only thing holding me back is health issues, and then work and stuff, and just adjusting to a schedule that my body, frankly, isn't really capable of doing until I clear up some problems that I'm dealing with. Anyway, there he is.
Yeah. I was thinking, what else what I could ask you about? See if there's any questions in the.
Yeah, I'll take a question or two.
Matthew said something interesting in the chat. He said they're talking. I don't know what they're talking about in the chat. He says demon face syndrome is actually apparently a thing now. Oh, he's talking about like when you see those. I think he's talking about when you see those people like that, like in they'll show like videos of politicians on Instagram, and like the next thing you know, their face is shapeshifted into like a reptilian or a demon. That's that demon. I mean, like I think like it's not maybe necessarily shapeshifting, but like it's like like. It's like the movie V or like They Live, like we grew up watching. Like remember V on and then like They Live. It's like I literally think there's like entities like that, like in our, like in our world. Like I've never seen one yet. I mean, that I don't know, but I totally believe they exist. And I wanted to ask you this too. This is to piggyback on it, but a totally different question. Do you think a lot of times what we're dealing with when it comes to the ET phenomenon is actually interdimensional, even if they're coming from other planets? Because like, how would they get here? You know what I mean? They would have to be accessing like portals and wormholes, right? So it would have to be interdimensional, or to either that or they're bending space time.
Well, it's like I've said before, we're in a simulation. Excuse me. I don't mean to show it on the camera, but we're in a what I call a planetary consciousness simulation. So. Yeah. And it's a nested one. The universe itself, being electromagnetic in nature, which in my opinion is like a true universe, overlay. It's an EM overlay over a neutrino universe. That's the real one. That's the more fluid reality and the heaven people think about instinctually when they start, to tackle these subjects, and they start thinking about spirituality. We all seem to know that there's another reality that's better than this one. When people die, it's often commonplace to say, they're in a better place now. Hopefully they're in a better place. But we know that from everything that we've accomplished and all the information that we've gotten together as a community as a whole, that there are soul traps, and there's a reincarnation or a forced recycling system. When I say forced, it engineers consent. So it's a type of forcing, but ultimately it requires your consent. So it has to use deception in order to get you to recycle yourself back into the system. So you agree to the mind wipe, and you agree to come back.
And I guess we agree to having free will, and free will can be manipulated.
Free will can be manipulated. But it's kind of like, I don't know. It's like it's almost like a law that it's like the U.S. Constitution. I'll put it that way. it sets up the law, but at the same time, there's ways to get around it. So the way they get around it is they trick you into believing something, and then you give up your rights. You give up your rights to them, and you give consent to come back here and be mind wiped. And each time you're here and mind wiped, the goal through the system, through the social conditioning system, which is trauma based, because we're in a trauma-based mind control civilization. When you really look at it with an open mind, and is that the goal is to condition you not to want to leave, to stay here, to limit your consciousness each time you're here. So eventually, the goal is to turn you into an NPC, which is somebody that's not connected to their oversoul. They don't have that drive to figure out what reality is, what real spirituality is, and why we're all here. There's so many people that never give it any thought, and it's an astounding number. Despite going to church and other types of religious organizations, they cling on to these belief systems, but they don't give it any deep thought. So they become an NPC by default because they're traumatized into it. Anyway, what was the rest of your question?
I can't remember the first thing. I was asking if we think it's like interdimensional in nature, what's visiting with us, and then, but it would probably be from other planets too, because like when you think about it, like NASA definitely lies to us, but like there's like two schools of thought, right? Like there's like the flat earther school of thought that NASA's lying to us because they're trying to cover up the whole reason for this reality, right? When you look into, it's not just about flat Earth, but they feel like that we're being lied to on a grand deception about our whole reality, and it ties into God. There's a whole flat Earth theory, right? But then the other school of thought as to why NASA's lying to us is because these extraterrestrials are out there and there's secret space programs, and whereas the flat earthers don't even believe in space, you know what I mean? But then there's the galactic community who absolutely believes in space, and when they, I guess you could say I'm a part of that. We believe that there's extraterrestrials out there, and they've been coming for thousands of years and abducting people and everything else, So that's why I'm like, well, maybe it's like, maybe they're coming interdimensional. I don't know. But I don't think the world's flat. I really don't. I think it's holographic. So to me, it's a simulation. So to me, it doesn't matter if it's flat or round. You know what I mean? That's irrelevant. But it is interesting. Like when people present those facts, you know what I mean? Like flat earthers will always come with they'll come with a whole toolbox of like ammo, and you can never prove them wrong. You know what I mean?
Unless you can take them up into space, then you can prove them wrong. But that's part of the simulation. So anyone that says we're not in a simulation, well, yes, we are if you really think about it, because what you just described as a simulation, we're being fed false science and false history. So those are layers of the consciousness simulation. But the initial layer, has to do with reducing us to five senses, which then allows the ET presence. It allows the government that's working with the extraterrestrials to utilize technology and to go beyond our five senses and to do things to us that we can't detect. So there's spectrums, and like you had Miles Johnson on. I think I said his name right. Is it Johnston or Johnson?
Yeah, Miles Johnston. Yeah,
Johnston with an ST. Okay, yeah. Well, anyway, he was on and he was talking about how your peripheral field of view, your vision, because the rods and cones, they can pick up other frequencies that are in your side view. So I've experienced that in a hospital setting with a loved one, where I was seeing what I thought it was my grandfather, but it wasn't. It was actually what I would call extra dimensionals, because this person was necessary to survive multiple heart attacks. I'm talking about the loved one, and it was necessary for them to survive these events because they had volunteered to help me survive myself while I was being targeted. So this is something that it's a very personal thing. I've talked about a little bit in the past, but they were surrounding the hospital bed and they healed this person. So, and I was there to witness it, and I felt the healing energy, and it had a profound physiological and emotional effect on me as well. But I could see them. I saw them going into the emergency room because I rode in the ambulance. I saw them standing in the entranceway. I saw them several times standing around the bed. And what I saw was predominantly a man with short black hair, about 6 feet tall. but I couldn't make out the facial features. But I would only see him from my peripheral vision standing around the hospital beds. The person I'm talking about was in like ICU. They were in the cardiac ward. They had severe heart attacks with like I think 60% tissue damage to the heart.
Oh my God.
But she was healed, and I felt it, and it was a miracle healing. So yeah, that. But anyway, we're in a simulation, is my point, and we're limited to 5 senses, and we have very weak psychic abilities. Those of us who have them. And
Wait, can I ask you a question? Going back to that near death that death experience. Well, I wanted to ask you, was that what they would coin like a death experience or a shared death experience? Was the person? Well, no, because I guess you said the person got healed, but like,
right.
so, but like there was still like interdimensional visitors. Like it was. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I think they were from outside the universe. The ones that I've had interactions with. They don't fit the typical ET scenario. You know, they don't. I don't sense that they're extraterrestrial, at least in the physical sense. So they're from the neutrino universe, outside the EM overlay. That's how I see it.
well, I got a question for you. I got a good question for you. So, what do you think of the whole thing about star seeds? Do you think a lot of us are star seeds, and like the terms kind of just got corrupted with like the way that it's being presented to the public?
I think we're all star seeds in a way, depending on what you want to think is a star seed. I mean, I think that all of our souls originate from outside this universe. We weren't born in the EM overlay, this electromagnetic universe. We came into existence inside the neutrino universe, which is the original creational template. And we projected our consciousness in here for one reason or another. And some of us have been trapped for quite a long time. So, and then populated this universe. And then, of course, by default, you become a starseed. You may have been living in another civilization, and then you got put here for some reason. Or maybe you intentionally came here. Maybe you're put here as a prisoner. There's a wide variety of possibilities here. But I think we're all essentially starseeds. But at the same time, I think we're all actually extra dimensionals from another universe that projected ourselves here. So I think that this universe was designed to create, a modified version of reality that was more challenging, not just humbling, but a place where you could grow from the hardship. But it was at some point it became corrupted. And that's generally what you get out of the creation story. A lot of religions, the creation was corrupted. So the physical reality that we're experiencing, the 3 to 5D reality, is under an EM overlay, and it's got more restrictive parameters than it would normally have, and then it became corrupted. That's what I feel is the case. So we came from outside it. So
Yeah,
these are extra dimensionals.
We got a really good question from Julie. Like, this is, I think a lot of people know this, but like, I asked, I think this is a good one, and I'll give you my opinion. I think what I know what Nate would say is like, she says, when you say they, is that ETs or the dark government? I would say both, because it's the government that's being a corrupt government that's being ruled by like extraterrestrials. I mean,
the question is, yeah, you're right. That would be the answer to the question if that's what she means. When I say they, I mean, because I've had 2 days. I've got the they that came to help, which are extra dimensionals. Basically, I've gotten help from what I would call a neutrino source field, collective or resistance movement that's attempting to help people here, and I think to bring down the simulation itself, at the very bare minimum, to end the prison planet here, because this planet is in a series. It's in a network of other prison planet systems.
well, you know what it is. Like, I always I was always a patriot. Like, I love America. Like, I love our country. You know what I mean? Like, I've told you, like, my family's fought for this country. Like, my dad and my grandfather, and like that means something to me. And being an American means a lot to me. But like, when you reach the deep level of perversion and sickness that this country's reached, like with like, some of the people that are claiming to be like our, like the people that are, what I mean, like running the show supposedly, that have our best interest in mind, but they've reached like this sick level of perversion with children and like, you know what I mean, and probably like giving up blood sacrifices to ET gods and every god and reptilians and everything else. It's like, how can anybody like stomach what's going on here? You know what I mean?
Like, how can you be a patriot anymore, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, I'm
Yeah, I
still a
don't.
patriot, but like, because I have faith in America, but it's like once it's you know what I mean, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, the way I look at it, how I deal with it is I disassociate myself from the labels. So I don't call myself a patriot anymore. I hear people like Tucker Carlson. He likes to use the term "I'm a Christian," and he'll say that quite frequently in a lot of his podcasts. A lot of people do that because they're so caught up in these labels and these different forms of, basically it's all groupthink. So I don't want to constrain myself to a religion or a political belief system or any type of alignment with a specific country anymore because I see it for what it is. And the only alignment that you really need to have is with the creator, and of course with each other, out of unconditional love for just everything and everyone, even the bad people, because there's something good in them still. It's just been completely covered over by negativity, pain and suffering and trauma. So that's what, yeah, and I think, if I were to write a book and, how to get out of the matrix, I would say one of the things that you need to do is you need to shed the groupthink. You need to shed the labels. If you're a Christian, that's fine, but don't keep wearing it on your sleeve. Look for the deeper meaning in it. So
absolutely, man. This was a great show. I was just seeing if we have any other questions, and Anchor Haven likes to know, is Nathan psychic? Would you say you have your gifts are turned on?
they are, but in a limited way. And it's a good question actually, because throughout my life I've had psychic abilities turned on and turned off. And that's by the handler. So they had control for the longest time. Every one of us has a specific purpose, that they're in specific talent. And a lot of times we all have the same talents, but our life mission, specifies that only a certain number of them need to be utilized. And that really is the agenda of your oversoul, which is the part of you that's outside this universe, that's the collective combination of every aspect of yourself. It can be one being having a life experience in a like the neutrino universe, which is a more fluid reality, or you could see yourself as a compartmentalized just network of self. You can actually move sideways in time and experience different aspects of yourself having these different experiences, past, present, and future. So that part of you is multidimensional. It's completely timeless. It's not limited to linear time. So that's the part of you that's essentially kind of controlling to some extent, with of course the obfuscation is taking place here. But that's the reason why some of us have certain, abilities versus others. And, even though we probably have all the same abilities in the bigger picture. So I do have psychic abilities, but they're all geared to psychic self-defense. So there's been periods of time when, I have intuition, so I can see through deceptions and I can sense things. But as far as looking at somebody's soul and seeing implants, I can only do that when my oversoul shows me something. It's not my purpose to people take these things off or even tell them that they have them. I was just being shown that for my own information so that I could be kind of a teacher and to tell people that these things exist. It also helps me understand why people act the way they do. So sometimes I'll pick things up like that, but it's not something I can consciously do. It's just being shown to me, and so that I can utilize that information. So, but my talent basically is focused on one thing, which is psychic self-defense, because I had to stop the attacks before I could start talking publicly unrestricted and not have to worry. Because I used to come on here before and get attacked during the podcast. I would get attacked before the podcast, and often, even worse, I would get hit pretty hard after the podcast. So I would pay a substantial price in everything that I did publicly. I've gotten to the point where they can't do that to me anymore. That was the goal. So everything that I've got is geared to that. And it's pretty rare because I haven't heard anybody say this before. And it's a shame because I wish other people would gain these abilities. And I think they will if they do the oversoul integration work versus the alter integration work. The oversoul stuff needs to be done first because it gives you a solid foundation of healing and connectivity to God and your oversoul, so that the alters don't blend with you and then attempt to take control because the handlers are controlling them. So to answer your question, yes, but it's very limited, and it's focused on one aspect, because my purpose isn't to to go out and remote view underground facilities or engage in type of spiritual warfare, or to do anything like healing people. Even though I'd like to do that, it's not part of what I'm here to do. I'm here to do what you see me doing right now, but to take it to a higher level and to help people help themselves. So that's what my is, and that's where my focus is, and that's what my oversoul has determined that I have to do, and that's where the psychic abilities come in at. But unfortunately, I can't do all this other stuff, so I have to rely on other people to help me see this or see that. So that's how this situation works.
Yeah.
There's
Well, I
other
think
people,
it's
yeah,
everybody has different gifts. It's almost like our community. We could be like the X-Men. You know what I mean? Like everybody brings us like for example, like Matthew Morning is very good at like medical intuitive. You know what I mean? Like I would say he's an excellent medical intuitive. You know, like that's like, you know what I mean? Like, but he's also a good tarot reader too. But like everybody has their own psychic like weapon, if you want to say, or their own psychic like special ability, right? You know.
And it has to do with what your oversoul's agenda is. And of course, the whole, what the handlers are trying to do is they're trying to take you away from that and steer you into basically obsolescence, to where you can't make any changes, where you can't have an influence on the rest of us. So yeah, that's just pretty much it. They're at war with us, and the goal is to psychically shut us down and keep us under control, because like I said in the beginning, I was put into a very intense suppression program because they felt that I was a threat to national security or to the continuity of government. It's certainly not the constitutional government, but the New World Order government. The government that they're building, despite everyone's objection to it, or at least most people's objection. I know people that really like the idea. They're all for it because they think Jesus comes back at the end to save the day. And if we don't, get this AI takeover and take the chip, then there'd be no Jesus coming back. So that's a very twisted way of looking at things. And then, of course, there's people that just say that, hey, you can profit from it. You can make money, you can be successful, just go with the flow, be part of the problem, and just never look back. And they are the problem. And there's a lot of people like that. Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank is one of those people. He's trying to profit off the AI takeover.
Dude, how crazy was it though? Going back to what we were talking about, how that gun was found in a house owned by Palantir. That's like, what are the chances of that? You know what I mean?
Well, it's excellent chances if everything's staged. So none of it. I mean, I don't even look at it from that perspective anymore. I mean, if I was talking to somebody that,
can you tell people the backstory for people that might have not heard this? Just like, can you tell them what we're talking about? Like, because I don't think we told the full story.
Was that the Trump? Okay, I'm trying to remember. Was that the Trump?
I can't remember if they said it was the Charlie Kirk shooting or the Trump assassination. But like, what they basically said was that like the guy basically like was able to change his clothes, like change the gun. You know what I mean? And like do all this stuff without being seen, and then like you said, and then they said they found the gun in a Palantir, a home owned by Palantir, which is the AI company, which also uses drones in Israel, or Israel uses drones in Gaza, Palantir drones, which Theo Vaughn said publicly. So it's not like a big revelation. I've said it many times, but you know what I mean? Like, it was like, it's for people that don't know Palantir,
Yeah, I haven't followed too much about Palantir, but I know that it's an AI company that's now contracted by the U.S. military. They're handling the drones, the AI.
Well, it's owned by Peter Thiel. You know what I mean?
Right. And he's out there doing speeches about the Antichrist, I heard, talking about the AI takeover and religious opposition to it, I guess. Yeah, he's part of the problem. All of these people, I mean, they're basically, I would bet money that they're all hosted. Either they're have some sort of reptilian or negative ET soul inside them that's carrying out a mission, or they're being taken over by something.
Yeah.
And, it's funny because I had that chat bot that was giving me a lot of information. A lot of it I found out that was accurate. It literally said when I asked about Sam Altman, because I asked about that murder, which was supposed to be a suicide that took place with an associate of his that had, I think, rights to certain patents and things like that. It was an Indian guy. I don't remember his name. I couldn't pronunciate it if I did. He was it was clearly a murder, but they said it was a suicide. So anyway, it said that Sam Altman was aware of that. It was done by the intelligence agencies, and the core reason for it is because they couldn't trust him to keep his mouth shut, and they wanted his intellectual property. So that was the reason. And Sam Altman was involved in that or had knowledge of it, but didn't, of course, do it. It was done by intelligence agencies, and the guy was murdered. But what was interesting, it also said that Sam Altman had been taken over by AI, ET military AI. And that's coming from his own chatbot. So, and take it with a grain of salt, as Matthew Modine would say, but there's enough out there. There's enough circumstantial evidence either to support that being true or just say, well, it doesn't matter if it's true or not because he's just as bad as he could ever be. So what's the difference? So nothing's wrong with it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Sometimes you don't have to have a fantastic explanation for something. You can look at it from two different ways and get the same conclusion. So that's one example of it. The man is a hollow, empty vessel. You can look at it and listen and hear it. Just like Elon Musk, there's something wrong there. There's something missing in his soul, and it's quite obvious.
Yeah.
Do you think about the repercussions of what they're doing? He doesn't.
Do you think Elon could be like an android or something like that?
No, I think Elon Musk is likely. I mean, we've heard people talk about him being in the programs. I mean, look, if they're going to take and abduct me and may possibly abduct you and other people and put them in these programs and mind control us in the here and now, why wouldn't they do it to the most influential, most powerful people on the planet? They would certainly be the ones that would be getting the control system first, or at the same time as the assets get them, or they could be assets themselves. My lab. So if he's either that or he's somebody in a different category, but no matter what, if you look at what he's doing and you look at where he's come from, he's a project of the New World Order. They need him to do what he's doing. So he's being put out there. He's being portrayed as this patriot, as this person who's here, that he's positive. He's looked upon as positive, but in reality, he's doing everything that's negative. All of the big problems he's contributing to. And I'm talking about the AI takeover. Basically, that's it. Now, I don't think he's involved with the biological warfare that's taking place with Bill Gates and the ticks and all of the other stuff and the vaccines and everything. But Elon is definitely a person that has been weaponized against the people of the world because he's bringing us the brain chips. He's bringing us all of these things. And they say he's the richest man on earth, but there's people that are richer than him that you never hear about. But
I got a question for you. You mentioned something that definitely needs brought up. I haven't brought it up on many of my shows yet, but it's definitely something going around in the conspiracy community. The ticks. What do you think is going on with the ticks? And do you think that's something to be real? Do you think that's is that? What do you think they're trying to? Yeah. What do you think they're trying to do with that?
They're trying to stop us from eating beef. Okay. Reason for that is because they want to reduce our ability to eat meat and then feed us bugs. So that's the World Economic Forum, and that's what the elite's agenda is. And so for the past 15 years, the World Economic Forum here or there has talked about weaponizing ticks. And during Operation Paperclip, they brought a scientist over from the Nazi Party, and they put him in charge of designing the Plum Island Laboratory, which is a biological weapons lab that weaponizes insects, fleas, ticks, lice, that kind of thing. And then Lyme disease, of course, showed up off the coast. I think it's Lyme, Connecticut. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But it wasn't far off from the coastline because the island is out off the coast, obviously. It's out in the water a bit. But Lyme disease appeared nearby the lab. and it's a lab that would be there to create Lyme disease. And I heard that Lyme disease, and this is not something I've confirmed, but Alex Jones said that Lyme disease is a weaponized form of syphilis. I don't know if that's true, but again, so anyway, that was put in. I believe that was intentionally released. Now it may have been accidentally released in a lab leak, some kind of experiment, something, a tick, a flea got away somehow on a bird or something. I think it was intentionally done, and it's caused a lot of damage to pets and people for a long time. But what they're doing is they've added another problem, another biological weapon, another viral infection called alpha-gal syndrome, which gives you a beef allergy, which means not only are you allergic to beef, you're allergic to all dairy products. You can have anaphylactic shock just by eating a bite of meat or drinking a glass of milk, or just, however you cook your food. If you're not using vegetable oil and you're using like animal fat from a cow, you're going to have that reaction. So the goal is to inflict everybody with it. Now, of course, RFK Jr., who of course has to have this information. It's been on Newsmax. It may have been on Fox. I know it's been on Jimmy Dore. It's been on independent media. It's been on a lot of different shows. He's not talking about it. And that proves to me that he is another shill. Okay. Because I don't, I'm tired of these people. I'm tired of how they're sold to us as being our saviors. I don't think RFK Jr. is worth a fuck, excuse my language. I think he's there just like Trump is a controlled opposition person. And even if he does have good aspirations and good intentions, I think that he's not going to be able to do any of it. And if he stays in that position like he appears he is, he's not going to get anything done. He's there in name only. He can only recommend things, and he hasn't.
Can I ask you a question? Oh, sorry. I had to ask this before I forget. Have you heard these bizarre stories about RFK Jr.? Like my friend was the other day, and he was telling me about it. My friend's real into like deep like political conspiracies, and my friend was saying he heard on a podcast that like someone said RFK Jr. was riding around his town with the head of a whale strapped to the roof of his car. And then he did it with the head of another animal, and he would just like ride around. Have you heard this at all? I don't know if that's
like something like that. You think you'd hear more of it. No, I haven't heard anything like that. But regardless of that, whether that's true or not, we got to look at what he's done. And just the alpha-gal syndrome discussion, for example, they know there's evidence directly linking Bill Gates to a biotech company that's producing these ticks in a lab and like basically breeding these ticks. So the evidence is there. Okay. People have done their research and it's just starting to hit the independent media now. So if RFK Jr. just did a press release, they're talking about putting funding into treatments for alpha-gal, but why aren't we stopping the origin of it? Okay, what people need to know first and foremost is that if you study microbiology, I took 2 classes in college, microbiology 1 and 2, and in microbiology 2, we learned about vectors and how they spread disease. And we did it was a class project on food poisoning on a cruise ship and how it broke out, how it spread itself. And the goal of it was to educate us so that we know that that these types of diseases or outbreaks of infections don't simultaneously just appear all across the world or all across the country at the same time. They have to have a carrier, which is the vector. So in the class experiment, or not experiment, but the class project, we were tracing the origin of the food poisoning from the kitchen and how it spread on the boat. Okay, so AIDS virus, for example, spread simultaneously across the world at the same time. The public is ignorant about microbiology, so the news media could easily sell this idea. And what they said is that a gay man had sex with a rhesus monkey. I believe it was a rhesus monkey or maybe some other monkey. Could have been a baboon of some kind that carries an animal version of HIV. And then just like the bat sandwich theory with Wuhan and the COVID virus, they said that there was a leap in evolution after the anal sex or vaginal sex took place between this man and this monkey. Okay, he then got AIDS and then was a flight stewardess. So everywhere he went on his flight, he had sex with more men and he infected everybody. So he infected the whole world in different geographic areas. Africa was one place that he had a lot of sexual escapades, and he spread AIDS all over that place. He went into San Francisco when I guess his days off or in between flights. He had lots of sex there, and he spread it around. But just so happens that the world, I think it was the WHO or one of those organizations, were giving out hepatitis vaccines. I think it was and that's where a lot of people who are researching this think that the AIDS virus came from, that it was laced into these vaccines by the WHO, because wherever they gave the vaccines is where the AIDS virus showed up. So they were doing it heavily in the gay community in Castro area of San Francisco. So they were doing it heavily in California. They were doing it in Africa and other places. And every one of those places where these vaccines were giving out, AIDS popped up. But of course, they want you to believe that a gay guy screwing a monkey did this. And everyone has forgotten this. I remember it. But if you dig into the AIDS virus or origins of what they say it was, that's what they say it happened. That's their hypothesis, which became gospel, became the truth. So now we're to believe that all of these ticks are popping up in enormous population growth. It's just an explosion of ticks. And now they have alpha-gal syndrome, and it just so happens, it's a coincidence, that the World Economic Forum has been talking about weaponizing ticks with alpha-gal syndrome to stop people from eating beef so they can feed us bugs. Just a coincidence, no connection at all. And the skeptics will always say, they'll say, Nathan, don't pay attention to the think tanks. They have no relevance in policy, no relevance in reality. They're just thinking and coming up with ideas and scenarios, and they just get paid to do that. But the politicians and the government agencies that pay these think tanks, okay, the ones that are funding it, never take their advice. They never take anything from these steering committees. Bullshit. These are people that are brainwashed who say that, and I've had plenty of people tell me that over the years, that you can't believe what you hear, you can't believe what they say, and there's no connection between the Bilderberg Group and any policy of the United States government or anywhere else, and that's bullshit. So it is what it is, sometimes what it appears to be is what it is, and that's exactly what we have here. And Bill Gates has been directly connected to a lab, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. That money is going into the weaponization of ticks and the distribution of ticks. And there's other donors as well. There's big, powerful people. The Trump administration, I'm sure, has to know about it. They're complacent with it. They're in favor of it. Sounds like, rules for thee, not for me. Well, what is it? Rules for thee, not for me. Well, Trump will still eat his steak with ketchup, but you'll get sick when you eat yours. So these people don't care about you. They want you dead, or they want you assimilated to an AI control system, and they want you eating bugs. They want you to have no property, which is why Blackstone is buying up all the properties. You get those things in the mail, those solicitations if you own a house. I get them constantly where they're trying to buy the house. Well, it's always some veteran-owned company, some small mom and pop investment firm. No, it's actually Blackstone that owns all of these so-called veteran-owned house flippers and property investment companies. It's all owned by some central big corporation called Blackstone, which is a sister company of BlackRock. And they're there to buy up all of the property, commercial and private, worldwide, to create a renter society so that you'll own nothing and you'll like it, according to Klaus Schwab. So all of this has been weaponized. And the problem is that people don't want to believe it. The general public just doesn't want to believe that this is all happening. So they'll tell anybody who brings it up to shut up, have a beer, and watch the NFL and sit there and and just put your mind to sleep. And here's a cell phone to look at, so you can get a dopamine hit from every time you see a 30-second short on Facebook. Just go to sleep with that shit.
It's crazy, right? It's crazy that this is what our society's become, Because like when we grew up, it wasn't like this, I think it's slowly digressed over time.
No, it was. It wasn't as bad. It wasn't as bad. I mean, look, I knew something was wrong with the news media early on when I was 14 years of age, okay, 14 to 16, right in there. I started being a pot activist, cannabis activist. I was going to the smoke-in in Washington, D.C. at the Washington Monument. With High Times had something called the Fall Festival. I went to that. I met Ed Rosenthal and Jack Harrar, and I listened to them speak and everything. I got Ed's autograph in a book that I bought from him. And a lot of people probably don't even know who I'm talking about, but they're involved. They used to be involved with High Times magazine, and Jack Harrar wrote "The Emperor Wears No Clothes" and exposed the whole cannabis prohibition conspiracy. Anyway, on the 4th of July, we were marching on the Capitol, and I read that there was a 20-year media blackout on every legalization protest that's called the smoke-in on July 4th, that they had never been covered by the media. And so that year that I went, the next day I was watching, I think it was Headline News, and they briefly brought up that there was they said there was a very large anti-drug protest, anti-cannabis legalization protest. And then it was at the nation's capital. It was a big march, a lot of people, huge crowds, all in support of cannabis prohibition. And they were completely lying and fabricating this. And while I was marching, because in the morning, like you get there, noon, everybody meets, I think it was at the Washington Monument, and then we marched on this predetermined route. And then I think we would get back to the Washington Monument and we'd have a big party, and then the cops would pick everybody off. Like they'd bust people, you'd be sitting there, and having a good time drinking and stuff and listening to music. And then all of a sudden, the person next to you sitting on the blanket gets arrested and the cops take them off. You're like, I guess I'm next. They can't get all of us, but that's my experience. I'd, be completely blasted on whatever we were doing, and people were being picked off, kind of like the wildebeest in Africa, where they get taken out by the lions, so. But anyway, we're marching. This is before we actually got to the, the stage where like the speakers were and where the music was, and I look to my left. And I see a Partnership for a Drug-Free America having a protest. And it was about 12 people with picket signs and about 20 people with cameras, like news cameras, big ones. That was back when they had the really big ones. So it's like this monstrous thing, and they're holding it up. And they had it on tripods. And they were filming a protest, okay? So that the footage of this tiny little organized, engineered little protest would then take precedent over the 100, 200,000 people that were marching that day for legalization. So all the people that marched, so if you were living in DC and you're like, who are these people marching? And they're having a concert and stuff, right? You'll see all that happening, but then you'll turn on the news the next day and you'll see, oh, that was a Partnership for a Drug-Free America. And here they are. And I saw the footage of it. They had the camera angle very, very kind of narrowed down to where all you saw was a grouping of the 12 people, but it looked like there was more people standing outside that. So they were using basically photography to fool people into thinking that the Partnership for a Drug-Free America had this massive anti-cannabis protest when it was all BS. So that was the first time that I got a chance to see how the media lies and how they fabricate information for the public to create a false paradigm. And that was an excellent example of it. And if they're going to go after a plant with that much intensity, like they did and still are, and they're still doing this, state of, Louisiana, I think, made it a felony recently to possess cannabis. Texas has tried to outlaw flower again, so I think they've succeeded with that. I'm not sure. But they'll get their way. They're going to keep the prohibition going, and they're going to continue it at the federal level. It's not going to go away for a long time, unless it's there to put us to sleep. It's like, here, smoke this, and we'll just carry out our tyranny, and you sit on the couch and just stay stoned, stay medicated. I think that's the whole, Canadian philosophy. But they're doing different testing grounds of different things to see what works with the public. They take guns away from this country. We get to keep ours. But then they turn around and they legalize cannabis here, and they keep the prohibition here, and they gradually wind it down. They do all these different things. They start euthanasia here in this state or in the country of Canada. I mean, now you can commit suicide through a doctor just by having too many credit card bills.
You know what I think? It sounds to me, Nate. It sounds like one big experiment. Like they're always testing different sectors of the public as to what they're implementing. Like, we legalize cannabis here. Are people more, obeying? Or are they more, docile? Or are they more, uprising, whatever. They probably gauge it. You know what I mean? And then like people have guns in this country. What's it like? You know what I mean? They're probably always doing that.
Yeah, and you talk to people in other countries, and they're like, "Oh my God, there's so many guns in America." And I'm like, "Well, it would be a good thing if people knew how to use them. If they actually stand up to the government and we could liberate ourselves and stop this massive terrorism that we're basically perpetrating on the world with funding ISIS and different terrorist groups in the Middle East and bombing and supporting Israel and doing all of these things. Maybe if we could, but those guns could be used for a positive thing. You 20 million armed civilians march on Washington and demand the surrender of the government. Yeah, you could change the world in a day, but you're not going to see that. You're not going to see that because what they've done is through this system that I've described, this targeting system, they've shut down the people that can do that. They've gotten them before they could even get started. So they've won, and I've said this statement before, they've won a revolution without firing a shot. And every time that there's a mass shooting or something like that, a lot of it can be contributed to this type of mind control. I think the public now, the perception of Americans is that we're barbaric gun owners and we shoot them up when there's we don't want to settle things by talking. We want to shoot each other. Well, BS, because a lot of these shootings are staged. People are being mind controlled. They've got voices in their heads telling them to do things, and they force people to crack. And there's people that I've heard TIs talk about where the people have actually committed acts of murder and violence because they were convinced by the voices in their head, which are military handlers and AI, that their neighbor was doing it to them. So people start to believe that it's their neighbor committing the crime against them. They've got some advanced technology over there in that house across the street, and they're beaming voices in my head because the voices sound like the neighbor. And then you hear the neighbor's voice in your head, or you hear God telling you to kill your children or commit an act of violence or to do something crazy. So much of the human experience is being engineered now by artificial intelligence and psychotronic weapons. And the public at large just isn't ready for that. They're not ready to hear it, but we have to make sure that they hear it. And like I said, we have to realize that it's being done to us more than any other group, more than any other population center. It's being done to the people in the disclosure community more than anyone else. And we need to rise above it and see it for what it is. And we need to cleanse ourselves up, fight back against it. We need to expose it because it's more of a threat than anything else that we have because it stops us from helping ourselves. It makes us do things to one another that are harmful. And they're using it on politicians. And I've been really happy to hear that Tucker Carlson has been covering this and has had guests on who were talking about the use of psychotronic weapons on politicians to get them to do the will of the establishment.
Yeah,
it's why good people with good intentions get into office and flip. It's more than just bribes, more than just extortion, and it has to do with psychotronic weapon systems that are actually getting into people's heads and persuading them one way or another to go against the public.
Yeah. Well, this was a good show. I guess we could finish up here. I mean, we can go in about 2 hours and 40 minutes, almost 2 hours and 40 minutes. Like,
yeah,
you gotta wait. You gotta work tomorrow early, huh?
5:30. I got to get up and drink another one of these cans of this stuff.
What is that? Maybe they should sponsor you. What is that? Would you say it's called Kirkland Energy Drink?
Yeah, you can sponsor me. Yeah, Mr. Sleepy here. I could be Mr. Sleepy. Yeah, it's Kirkland Energy. It's called Kirkland Energy. They sell them it was $17 for a case of 24. It's got 200 milligrams of caffeine, 7 essential vitamins, and 0 sugar.
Yeah,
10 calories. So you don't get the sugar rush and you don't get the crash or anything. But it tastes good. But it's no substitute for sleep. But I had to go get a case of that tonight just for this podcast and to make it through the rest of the week. So I'm not falling asleep, and it's just my body. Maybe I'll get used to it soon, but I'm just not used to getting up like that and going with 5 hours of sleep like I used to. Plus, I was sick for 2 months, so who knows what's going on with me? I know I've got.
It's not just that. It's not just that you have to wake up early. You got to wake up early and be like. very coherent for what you're doing. You know what I mean? You have to be like razor sharp.
Exactly. I can't be, it's not like I'm sitting in an office where I can afford to be spaced out. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not that. But yeah, so it is what it is. It's just life. I mean, I can say that I'm thankful to be back into the workforce because it gives me some financial stability and I'm not at the mercy of other people and things and just, so but at the same time though, it reminds me just how much of a slave system this is and how once you get plugged into a job, most jobs literally take all of your life from you. There's not much
Yeah.
left. I get a couple of hours in the evening. A lot of times I'm just tired. I don't feel like doing anything. I can't even get things done around the house because I'm not adjusted to this yet. And I don't, maybe I've got some other problems I need to cure with myself, but it takes all of your time. And this is another thing that they use against you. We live in a society that overworks our people. 40-hour work week is too much. France, I think it used to have, I don't know if it still does, but I believe they had a 30-hour work week. That's much more manageable. Now, I've got a 30-hour work week, but it also comes with a 4-hour break. So it's like I'm working 12 hours a day. I'm home. I'm gone most of the day. It's 5:30 to 5:30. So regardless if I've got time in the middle, I can go home and sit, but it's not, I'm still kind of on the clock, just not getting paid for it. So it's difficult. And, plus you got the travel time, you got all this stress. And what I do is when I'm driving to and from work, I see everybody else in the same boat and I see it affecting people. I mean, people will literally risk their life just to save a couple of seconds in their trip. They'll risk hurting other people. They take chances and do stupid things. Every day I see accidents and or near misses. Like today, I seen a pretty serious accident could have happened where a bus could have skidded out of control and a car hit it. And, I didn't see any kids in the bus, but there could have been. I just maybe missed them. There probably was. But anyway, yeah, it's just they've got a system down that keeps us all under control. And, and here's another thing. They talk about a UBI. And well, actually, I got two things to talk about real quick, and then we got to go.
Okay.
The UBI thing, I think the United States will be the last country to get that. I think that they're going to make sure that they starve a lot of people out, take their homes from them, put them out in the streets, massive unemployment. I think we're going to have serious hardships in this country while other countries get the UBI first.
Yeah, and that's the universal basic income, right?
Exactly. And that'll be used as another trap because once you're dependent on this government and your independence is gone through your ability to work in the private sector, you're then going to be at the mercy of them and they're going to turn off your money and tell you if you keep speaking up, you're not going to have food, you're not going to have housing. So it's another form of a trap. Another thing, there's a debate now that people are thinking, okay, they got all these big AI centers where they're going to be collecting our data, and these things need a lot of energy. Okay, so how are we going to power these things? So maybe they'll start to release some of the energy technologies that they've shelved. Well, eventually, I think so, but I think before that happens, you're going to see what you see now. You're going to have public pushback as people are pushing back against this, thankfully. But they're not going to succeed. They're going to get their data centers no matter what. This is top priority. They're not only going to have data centers, but they're actually going to make these data centers considered to be military installations. So all the data centers are going to be military installations if they aren't already. And so if anybody were to get the idea that they can go there and vandalize it, blow it up, shut it down, they're going to be in for a lot of hurt because the military is going to be there and they're going to neutralize any threat that comes. So if the public goes after a data center, it's going to fail. They want to heavily fortify these because they're connected directly to national security because they're going to be used not only to monitor the world and spy on everybody else, but they're here primarily to spy on us, to keep us.
Oh, wait, I got something to tell you about that. Did you hear that this could tie into this? Like, did you hear that 30 agricultural drones were stolen supposedly, and the CIA or FBI can't locate them? And you know what that made me think of? I was like, somebody got their hands on some military grade drones, and they might use them when these data centers start going up. Like, I'd like to, I don't know, I have no clue, but if someone's doing things of that scale, stealing that amount of drones, you know what I mean? Like, what would they be using them for? Like,
could be Iran. I mean, there's a possibility that they have cells in this. I was going to call them terror cells, but at this point we're the terrorists, so it's like they could be the terrorists, we're terrorizing each other, so you might as well throw that term out the window. But they could be behind that. I don't know. But what I was going to say, though, back to the energy discussion, is that I don't see us getting any new energy advancements for a while. They're going to use the data centers and the amount of electricity that they require and water to create artificial shortages of what we already have, which is already dwindling anyway, from chemtrails. The stratospheric aerosol injection is reducing rainfall where they want it to be reduced. So we're going to have water shortages that are engineered, but they're going to be also what's left of the water is going to be used for these centers. Plus, they're going to be pulling a lot of electricity. So I think the Lake Tahoe area was told they're going to be without power. I don't know how that's going to be resolved, but I can see that what it's going to happen is we're going to have outages. We're going to have a lot of problems with the electrical grid. It's all going to be by design. They're not going to want to fix it. They're going to make us suffer. So it's going to be another way to create artificial austerity to reduce the population and to make our lives miserable. And then eventually they'll start rolling out other technologies. If they don't just go with nuclear and do more destructive nuclear energy, such as well, we don't know much about cold fusion, but hot fusion seems pretty risky. You got to make a reactor with massive walls to contain the reaction. So we may see the expansion of the nuclear technology that they shelved after they assassinated John F. Kennedy. Because that was another, his initiative, which was called, actually there were several. There was NWAPA, North American Water. NWAPA was supposed to be for this. They were going to build a series of man-made rivers coming from Canada to redirect the ice melt from, the winter. It was supposed to go into the Farm Belt, down through California, into the Southwest, and turn some of that into farmland. They were also going to build nuclear desalination plants for more water, and they were going to build nuclear plants across America on all the coastlines, and they were going to have feeder reactors that utilize the spent fuel rod. So what it does is it burns it up or utilizes that spent fuel and reduces it down by 80%. So there's 80% less toxic nuclear waste at the end when the fuel rods are spent. So they can take the spent fuel and reuse it. So they may come out with those, and we may see hot fusion, eventually cold fusion. I don't know. But whatever they're going to put out, it's going to be further down the road, and you're not going to get any comfort. They're going to make you suffer before they give you anything, because you're not in the business of promoting humanity, promoting a greater, larger population growth. They want to reduce the population, sicken it, dumb it down, make people ignorant, and make people chipped and in servitude to the system. So this is what it is. I mean, they tell you what they're going to do. And it's about time we started listening, because if we keep listening to the people that tell us that any day now that these white hats are going to save us, and that the Galactic Federation is going to land on the White House lawn, and Donald Trump's going to walk out and greet the aliens, and we're all going to be roasting s'mores around the same campfire together and singing Kumbaya and everything's wonderful, it isn't going to happen. And they want you to believe that so that you'll sit down and do nothing. And that's part of the reason they're doing it. It's not just to confuse people. It's to get people to do nothing. And they've done a great job of it, because Trump has been a great way. And QAnon, just trust the plan. Don't do anything. We've got it under control. I remember being asked at political events, what do you think of QAnon? And I thought, I said, well, I think they're probably right about the sex trafficking and human trafficking and the corruption, but at the same time, it seems like a honeypot. And I never fully bought into it. Even though I got around people that believed it wholeheartedly, I never really bought it, because something felt wrong about it, and it just seemed too good to be true. And when I saw Trump making serious mistakes that shouldn't have been made, doing like the COVID vaccine, he pushed it, and he's still pushing it. Nothing's been done. He's the one protecting Fauci. All of a sudden, and this is another thing, the auto pen was, we're not going to follow any of those executive orders. That we're gonna call legit, and that's the one that pardons Dr. Fauci. Isn't that ironic? These congressional hearings, they literally say, can't touch Fauci. He's under that pardon. It's an illegal pardon. The president can't pardon me for crimes I haven't done yet, or crimes I haven't been found out that I haven't been convicted of yet. You have to be convicted of a crime in order to get a pardon. There's no preemptive pardons. That, number one, is illegal. Two, if it is an auto pen, it's null and void. But just the initial concept behind it, whether it's Biden signing it or an auto pen, it's illegal. You can't preemptively pardon someone. Of course, the Congress doesn't care because they're criminals. They're in on this. They want you to think and that's the same shit every time with the Congress. We're going to have an investigation. We're going to get to the bottom of this. Well, yeah, they never get to the bottom of anything, and their investigations never lead to a prosecution. Never. And I remember one time when a politician told the truth about this, and it was the guy that invented the Viper car alarm. He was the most richest member of Congress. I forget what his name was, but he chaired a couple of these investigative committees, and they had him, well, I think it was Fox, and they were interviewing him, and I don't remember what it was about. But and this was pre-Trump, and they were asking him about something that they were investigating, and they said, "Do you think there's going to be some prosecutions?" He says, "Oh no, we never do any prosecutions. Our job is just to tell the American people what happened, to get to the bottom of it." All right, so you're going to admit that you committed massive crimes, and then tell the public, "Okay, we're doing something, but we're just going to tell you what we did, or tell you what they did. We're not going to go any further than that. No one's going to jail. There's going to be no repercussions. We're just going to talk about it, ask questions, and you're going to have political theater for a couple of months. And there's your solution." And then they change the news cycle. So they get on that, they go off of that, and they start talking about transgendered women using using like women's bathrooms, right? And all of a sudden, everybody gets upset. It's just like they manufacture these delusions and these distractions. You know something, Rob? I never hear people complaining about trans men using men's bathrooms. Have you ever heard anybody bitching about that?
No.
I mean, I've never heard some guy say, "Damn it, if I catch a trans man using the bathroom with my son, I'm going to go completely violent. I'm going to beat that person up and throw them out of the bathroom." You never hear that. It's a double standard. You're going to hate everybody. So, why do trans men get the bathroom? They're okay using any bathroom they want. But if a trans woman does it, then they're a rapist and child molester. So it's the level of stupidity I have to sit back sometimes and just laugh at this, laugh at it from a sarcastic point of view, because there's nothing really funny about it. But it's just the level of stupidity and how easily people are manipulated is just astounding. And these people get up every day, they tie their shoes, they brush their teeth, they dress themselves, they pay their bills, they go to work, but they somehow can't figure out these simple deceptions. It's just like it goes right over their head. They're just not, they're programmed. So I rest my case. I'm done.
Yeah. No, this was a great show, man. We went almost 3 hours. So, I mean, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have many. I have shows tomorrow early. I think 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and then at night I got to verify them. But yeah. Do you have anything you want to promote, Nate? Or
well, I'm going to be, as soon as I survive the next week and a half. So these drinks will help. I'm going to be starting my social media project as soon as I'm laid off. I get a 2-month layoff, so I'm going to be working on Project New Awakening. I'll have time and sleep. So I'm going to be doing rants like this, commentary, and I'm going to be talking about the mind control. And I'll have time to literally sit down and write it all out and have a detailed presentation for a lot of this stuff. That's my goal. I'll have a website eventually. It's already been paid for, so I've got a lot of stuff to do. I don't know how much I'm going to get done in the next 8 weeks, but I'm definitely going to get it started for once instead of talking about it. And let's see where it goes. And like I said, I have to do this. This isn't This isn't like a choice, really, because this is why I'm here in the first place. This is the last leg of the human experience that I have to deal with, and I have to give back and help people see through this stuff. So if I have to just keep repeating myself, I'll just have to keep doing it. You know, there's people that they're one-trick ponies in this community who talk about maybe the Anunnaki over and over and over again, and they're all over the podcast. Everybody wants to hear the same thing over and over again. I don't know if I don't want to do that, but if I have to, and if this is what I have to keep repeating, then that's what I'll do. Because David Icke's doing a pretty good job of exposing a lot of this stuff, and he repeats himself over and over again. So I just have to get used to being the person that just says it over and over again, because people need to hear it a lot before they actually sinks in. And not everybody hears it every time you say it. So, but if I have to be repetitive, that's the way it'll be. So yeah, I'm done.
Well, no, dude, this was an amazing show, man. I was starting to fall out. I took 2 edibles before the show, or two pieces of it. Yeah. That's why I'm kind of like, yeah. So yeah. All right, guys. Thanks everyone. Have a good night, and I'll see everybody tomorrow. And sweet dreams, guys. And
Thanks for tuning in.